Hello everybody, I'm Super Train Station H, autistic gamer and writer, and I am going to be playing Pokemon today. I am so incredibly excited to finally be covering this game on my stream. It's a game I've planned to cover for many years, since before I actually started streaming, and now is finally my opportunity to do so. So for those who are not familiar with me, hey, I'm Super Train Station H. Yeah, here I am. Yeah, I was following Pokemon since the first whispers of a monster training role-playing game were leaking out of Japan through certain magazines. And I wanted to not just cover... I could just pop in the game into my analog pocket and play it, right? But I wanted to also cover my personal experience with watching the series migrate from Japan to, the Western world, and my experience with actually playing the game, and how it totally changed my life. Now, the more recent developments in the Pokemon franchise, unfortunately, are not really to my liking, but we don't have to dwell on that now, because this is all about history. So not only am I going to be playing the game, we're going to start off with a little Pokemon Pinball as a warm-up. But we'll be looking at magazine coverage at the time. I did not have Nintendo Power at the time, so we'll be looking at some of the early Nintendo Power coverage for the first time. The official player's guide from Nintendo Power, that I had. I don't know if we'll be looking at that today, but we will definitely down the road. Also, the manual for the game itself. Now, my original model Game Boy was the original model Game Boy. I got it in '95. And this was the Game Boy I had at the time I first played Pokemon. But let's get started first with Pokemon Pinball. Come on. Alright, I pressed the button on my stream deck. It'll take about a minute or so for it to change over, because normally my computer's slow with changing scenes. But in regards to this game we're about to play next, we're going to be playing a little Pokemon Pinball. And I play my games using the original cartridge on the analog pocket. It's a solution because I enjoy playing original copies of games. But really, let's be real. If you want to play the game, there's plenty of much more accessible, much less expensive options out there. You do not need a fancy FPGA system to enjoy these games. I personally prefer to play my games in a manner that in some way reflects the official release history, meaning original console and hardware if conveniently possible, original cartridges and discs on modern aftermarket systems that output to HD, and if neither of those, then official digital re-releases. Now, I have resorted to unofficial preservation efforts when official digital re-releases are not possible. I played Pachinko for SG-1000, which is a game that costs several $1,000s, and we're not paying several $1,000s for Pachinko. So we're gonna play for just about 15 minutes of Pokemon Pinball, and then we'll get started with the magazine coverage. Not a great deal of it, because I do want to get to the game itself. So in 15 minutes we'll get started with the game, with actually moving on to Pokemon Red, which is the version I played back in the day. So, Pokemon Pinball is actually running a version of the Revenge of the Gator engine. Now, Revenge of the Gator was a 1989 Game Boy released in the first year of the Game Boy's life by HAL. Satoru Iwata was heavily involved with its programming, who previously worked on the NES pinball game for Nintendo that launched with this console in North America. Alright, we're doing good. So in this game was really marketed as a Game Boy Color game, but it was fully compatible with the original model black and white Game Boy. It felt at the time like there was this, it felt like years had passed, or at least a year, between the Japanese release of the game and the North American release. Looking back on it, it was only a few months. This game released in 1999. In North America and in Japan. I think in Europe it didn't come out until 2000. But the neat thing is that because it was a cross-compatible game, even if you did not have the Game Boy Color, you could still play this game. I never owned it back in the day. I was very excited. I remember looking at the magazine coverage at websites that had screenshots of the Japanese release of the game. One website I went to for a lot of my Pokemon news was Euro Asia Game Boy, good old EAGB. Wow, what memories. That was a site that I relied a lot on for early coverage of Pokemon Gold and Silver, because they were covering the Japanese launch of the game and had a walkthrough if you were playing the Japanese version of the game, which I for some reason, I just could not wait for the English launch, the North American launch of Pokemon Gold and Silver. I got my dear aunt to import the game for me, and my aunt is how I got my Game Boy in the first place. She worked for an airline, and things that were left in the lost and found and not claimed within about a year or so were raffled off to the employees, and she won several Game Boys and a good library of games for them. Now, for a little background on me myself as a gamer, it was back in 91 when I got my Game Gear. I was a Sega kid. I was very interested to get a Game Boy. I never asked for one, but because my aunt got one for free, she gave me the Game Boys and their amazing libraries of games. And I learned the Nintendo way of playing games. I was a Sega fan. I was not a Sega partisan or fanboy. I didn't hate Mario. I just didn't know anything about Mario. So I got Game Boy, learned how to love Mario, Super Mario Land 1 and 2, Wario Land. And I really didn't know much about what role-playing games were, per se, but I remember I think it was an EGM that I saw a little just sidebar thing that said something to the effect of, oh, there's this Japanese monster training game called Pocket Monsters that's becoming really popular in Japan, and there are 2 editions of the game, so you have to trade with friends to collect a full library, or a full, I guess, menagerie in this case, of creatures. And I'm like, oh, that sounds cool, but it didn't seem like something that they would be marketable in North America. I didn't think they'd bring Pokemon to the US. Alright, let's see what I got for my bonus multiplier. Oh, I got a small little bonus of 600 points. Not bad. And so and I remember reading when the infamous photosensitivity episode, well, literal episode, but issue, it took place with a certain early episode of the Pokemon anime, where people across Japan had seizures because this was back before they were really aware of calibrating strobe effects and lighting effects in video games and in television shows to be safe for photosensitive viewers. And when I saw that, I thought, like, okay, there's no way they're bringing this to North America now. Like, not that I was really hoping for it. I was passively watching, oh, they opened a entire Pokemon store in Japan. I was passively interested in the Pokemon craze because even before this, as a child of the 80s and growing up throughout the 90s, I remember reading some of the very earliest books about video games, and there was a book that my mom had about different fads and trends of the 20th century, and it was released just in time that one of the last chapters of that book was about Pac-Man and video games. And it was really referring to Pac-Man and video games in the past tense as something that happened, that were a craze that kind of just died out. And because it was after the arcade market died down, it was after the home console market crashed, like, Atari, Television, Coleco, and Vectrex. That market really died due to lack of quality control and an overblown market. And so video games really weren't thought of as something that would make a big comeback. But I remember reading the merchandising phenomenon around Pac-Man, the albums, the themed music albums, the clothing, the pens, pencils, stationery. I had Pac-Man bed sheets that my mom found in a thrift store that were at the time maybe barely even 10 years old. But at the time I was like, oh wow, my mom found these old Pac-Man curtains and bed sheets from the early 80s. This is so cool. And so I definitely was fascinated by Well, first off, I was interested in video games because of Sega and Sonic, and I had a Game Gear. And when I'm interested in anything, I want to know how it started. When I was interested in Warner Brothers cartoons, I wanted to learn the history of, where did who started these cartoons? Where were the first cartoons made? What did they look like? What early cartoon characters were around that weren't around these days? And luckily, lots of stuff from as late as the 30s was still in syndication and circulation on television and Saturday morning cartoon blocks, alongside stuff of the time, things like He-Man, G.I. Joe, the original My Little Pony, Transformers, and then, going into, Bugs Bunny and Tweety, which is a lot of stuff from this 50s, 60s, and 70s. Sonic Sat AM, both versions of the Sonic cartoon, the Saturday AM version, my favorite, and the weekday version, which I loved as well. And so when I was reading and doing research about Pac-Man and the phenomenon around it, and then I saw this Pocket Monsters, I didn't know how to pronounce the accented E. I thought of it as hey there! Azarus in chat is saying, happy Friday, get high day. Not for me personally, but for those who do choose to partake, do so responsibly, please. I am enjoying my nostalgia. I'm talking about my early experience with the Pokemon franchise. This was a Pokemon game I only rented once on Game Boy. This came out in 99. I rented it in 99 and 2000. This is just a warm-up game to talk about a bit of my backstory, a bit of my history with Pokemon. But I recognized, in watching the Pocket Monsters craze sort of take hold in Japan, and I didn't even have the internet at this point. I didn't get internet access till late 98 or early 99. So I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, it was like January 99 I first got internet access through AOL 3.0, wowee. But through magazine coverage, little blurbs here and there about the developing Pocket Monsters craze, I was like, wow, this is kind of like what happened with Pokemon. But it's too bad they probably aren't going to bring this game out here. And plus the idea of a game that had 2 editions where you had to cooperate with a friend to complete the journey, or to complete the quest of having a full menagerie of the different Pokemon creatures, 150 at this early point in the franchise. It was definitely interesting. I didn't really think they'd try to bring it over, especially when I heard about the whole seizure event, the public health catastrophe in Japan, where we're going to try to catch Jinx a second time. So in 5 minutes and 45-ish seconds, we're going to be switching over to, I have some period magazine coverage all queued up, and Azarus is saying traffic was butt getting back to their place. Alright, well, I'm glad you made it back in one piece. It's funny, I was listening to, I never listened to the infamous To Be a Master, Pokemon, soundtrack back in the day, the Pokemon anime soundtrack. But I actually put it on just as mood music when I went out to Taco Bell to get a quick lunch while I got ready for the stream today. And I found a lot of these songs I never actually heard in their original context in this album. A lot of these tracks I actually are more familiar with their MIDI versions from Pokemon Puzzle League, a Pokemon game released only for the Western audience on Nintendo 64 that came out in 2000. Now when Pokemon originally released in Japan, it was red and green versions. In Japan, and later they made an enhanced edition, the blue version. Now they took the Pokemon Red and Green, used the enhanced character sprites from Pokemon Blue, gave it the roster of Pokemon Red and Green, and localized it in the West as Pokemon Red and Blue. Kind of confusing. But the cool thing about this is that they actually went ahead and decided to do a red and blue version, red and blue pinball tables for Pokemon, each having unique Pokemon on them. Like, for instance, Pokemon Red does not have Meowth in it, which is unfortunate, because that's a Pokemon I would have liked to have, and I never had it back in the day. I was never able to trade for it. But here, we've got There we go. We've got a Meowth that we have the chance to catch on the blue table because Meowth was an exclusive for Pokemon Blue version. Let's see if we can catch it. Let's see if we can catch him. Okay. Yeah, one of my friend's favorite Pokemon is Meowth, and they actually have a huge Meowth collection. And they had a cat. She had a Meowth hat that they put over their head, and their actual real cat hated it when she put that hat on. Alright. So. Alright, let's see how much... so in 3 minutes, we'll switch to the first magazine. Now, the first magazine I have lined up is a Nintendo Power issue. Not one I had at the time, because only in 95. Oops. Yeah, that is a, it looks like I left a timer on for a message from last week's stream, queuing people for, today's stream on Friday. So we've got double outlane stoppers. Pikachu is our outlane blocker in this game. So we've got double Pikachus right now. Alright. Which Pokemon is this? We have to hit those shoulders. Oh, it's Growlithe! Aw, little puppy. Little puppy. Okay. Can we catch? Now, this theme, if you're not familiar with this theme, this is the theme. I think it's Meisaze Pokemon Master. I don't speak Japanese. I probably butchered that. But it is the theme for the Pokemon anime in Japan. It's the equivalent of what we know is like, I wanna be the very best. And man, what a masterful... masterful, haha. What an excellent theme, like really energetic, catchy, optimistic theme song for the Pokemon anime to make it really marketable, to introduce the general concept of this, not just this show, but this unique universe and setting that had a pretty complex lore and world building even in its earliest days. I know one thing that was interesting in that the earliest days of the Pokemon franchise, they hadn't quite figured out for certain whether or not normal animals as we know them on Earth also exist in the Pokemon world, or if Pokemon take the place of animals. So, alright, only a minute and 15 seconds left before we move on to Nintendo Power. Now, this Nintendo Power issue is not one I read back in the day. I actually discovered this while I was playing. I played through the first about 25% or so of Super Mario RPG the summer before they announced the Switch version. I never went back and finished it, but in reading the period coverage of Super Mario RPG and Nintendo Power, I found a little, like, just passing mention, which was the first, as far as I'm aware, the first official reference of by Nintendo of America of Pokemon. And which was kind of, I think they made that passing mention before they had even knew for certain whether or not they'd even attempt to localize Pokemon into English for the, and other European languages for the Western audiences. Alright. 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah! Woo! Okay. Alright, so let's quit out of this for now. So let's quit out of here. And I'm going to actually swap out our cartridges right now from my analog pocket, which is what I'm playing which I play most of my handheld games on when it comes to original cartridges. So, yeah, so here we go. Here's our copy of Pokemon Red in there. But, what we need to do now, I need to turn on my desktop audio. Do I? Actually, no. Did I mess up? Do I not need to have the desktop audio on? Well, either way, for now, we're going to go over to our magazine reading scene. And it does take a moment to switch layouts, unfortunately. Yeah, it takes a moment to switch layouts, so we're going to be patient. But in the meantime, this is not to talk about this particular copy of Pokemon, unfortunately, this is not my childhood copy of Pokemon. This is a version I bought basically just at the nick of time. I bought it for probably 10 or 15 bucks from a GameStop back when there was nothing. I mean, Pokemon, they made millions of copies of this game between the red, blue, yellow version, whatever. But it was before the... Alright. Alright, so if there's a bit of an echo, please excuse. I don't think there should be an echo. But if there is an echo, it will be over soon. And while we wait for the echo to stop. So this issue of Nintendo Power, this is not one this is before I ever subscribed to Nintendo Power. I had yet to read Nintendo Power. Only within about a year before this issue coming out, and did I even get my Game Boy. Before that, I was strictly Sega only, strictly Game Gear only, in fact. It's echoing. Alright, so we're gonna wait. Alright, unfortunately it's echoing, but we're gonna... Yeah, the only time when it doesn't echo is... Yeah, my broadcast software likes to echo the music if I have my desktop audio on at the same time. I mean, so the reason I would use my desktop audio is for when we run the video later. So when we run the video later on, there's no audio from the broadcast software, so it'll just be the audio from our video. Okay, it's good now? Alright, great. So our cover story. Ken Griffey Jr.'s winning run. Nintendo used to be known as a very strong console for baseball games. If it starts echoing again, let me know, because I clicked it several times. I don't know if I clicked it on and back off. But, alright, so just scrolling, we're just gonna... So this here, you can see my mouse, I know. So this image here, this envelope art, is actually from a CG image Nintendo put out to promote the then Ultra 64, later known as Nintendo 64. So, on the side here, director Mr. Arakawa, he was the president of Nintendo of America at the time. Gail Tilden was, I believe, in charge of sales and marketing. You have Peter Main, Howard Lincoln. Yeah, lots of names that were around during the early NES age. Now, this track you're hearing right now is a track from the promotional Pokemon videotape we're going to be watching in a few minutes, but the interesting thing about this track is it seems like it's an unused theme to potentially be the main opening theme for the Pokemon anime that they put aside in terms of in favor of I want to be the very best, which I'm very glad they chose that instead. But they did a dance remix of this track that is very well known to Western Pokemon fans of this time period, but they never released this original version. The only time they ever used it was in the video, the promoting Pokemon in general before they started bringing out all of the... Alright, so let's scroll down here. Yeah, and so a funny thing from around this time period, Nintendo was I believe the majority owner of the Seattle Mariners at the time, and it went well into the DS era where they used Nintendo DS's download play feature to download a temporary app to your Nintendo DS that let you participate in trivia games and watch playbacks, I believe, and also order snacks to your seat. And with your Nintendo DS, it's important to note that this was in an era before smartphones were a thing. Nowadays, you just download this Seattle Mariners app and do it that way. But this is something Nintendo was experimenting with, potentially positioning DS to be a lifestyle device, and the way that we later saw. I just want to make sure. I just want to check real quick to make sure it's not. Okay, good. All right. Definitely not echoing. Definitely not echoing. Alright. Hold on. We're going to scroll through this. I'm going to turn on my Twitch on my phone real quick. I'll just be looking down and just checking. Alright. Hold on. Just checking. Alright. confirmed. We're not echoing. I just had to hear it for myself from the listener's perspective. So we have coverage of Mission Impossible, then in development for Nintendo 64. Now this is late into the Super Nintendo era. We're coming up on, we're in the process of building up hype for Nintendo 64 to the point where Nintendo canceled Star Fox 2 because they wanted 3D gaming to be something really more associated with Nintendo 64 specifically. So we have coverage of all these Super Nintendo games. Jurassic Park 2. Oh, Blood of the Chozo. So we have some coverage. Well, look at this. The second interactive story appearing in Nintendo Power Source on America Online. Blood of the Chozo is finally wound down after 3.5 months of intense creativity, bloody space battle. Yeah, so this looks like some kind of online comic that Nintendo is running in conjunction with AOL. And this was back when generally like an AOL keyword, like sort of page within their little walled garden, tended to have much more impressive audio-visual functionality than a web page on the World Wide Web at that point. This is a point where a lot of companies, rather than say, oh, go to www.whatever.com, would say AOL keyword Nintendo or AOL keyword Nick, I know. But this is before I actually had internet access. Alright, so here's our, surprisingly not our cover story. Super Mario Art. Oh, I almost scrolled right past it, but look, okay, here we go. This is it. This is ground zero. This is the moment that Nintendo first officially acknowledged Pokemon outside of Japan, as far as I'm aware. Pocket Monsters. Pokemon was kind of initially, I believe, sort of a moniker, a shortened moniker that sort of became the part of the actual branding. But this Super Game Boy RPG title, or titles, appeared recently in Japan from Nintendo. For the first time ever, Nintendo published a game in two versions simultaneously. In order to distinguish the two versions, one was packaged in red, the other in green. According to Japanese trivia experts, the green package is outselling the red. Which is interesting, because nowadays Nintendo is much more cautious about casually releasing. Now, Reliet in chat is saying, I'm assuming that I know about the Terra leaks. Yeah, so modern Game Freak in present day recently had a security breach. Unfortunately, yeah, can you believe, oh, shucks, can you believe it? I got so, okay, yeah, Pokemon is short for Pocket Monsters. And I believe the trademark for the phrase Pocket Monsters in relation to toys and video games was owned by someone else at the time, so it helped establish a more distinct branding. Wait a second. Okay, here we go. Alright, I thought I accidentally switched games. So, yeah, Pokemon is short for Pocket Monsters. And so Game Freak, the developer of, well, the funny thing is, with the way was the trademark specifically for Monsters in My Pocket? Because for trademark purposes, Monsters in My Pocket would probably be different from the specific phrase Pocket Monsters, unless they trademarked a bunch of things alongside it and only used one as their actual, one they used for marketing purposes. Just like how, with Pokemon, they trademark a lot of names for potential versions of Pokemon games that never actually come out. Like I think Scarlet and Violet have been trademarked since the DS era or something crazy like that. It's just getting. But anyway, so Barface, yeah. So here's got some Pokemon history, and nowadays, Game Freak had a security leak. Unfortunately, a lot of people's personal information was included in that leak. I do not support that, but what I am interested in for preservation purposes is actual, development history and things, behind the scenes stuff that otherwise would have never known. Trademark laws are so funny because Nintendo filed a trademark for the phrase Wii Remote, which was the official phrasing for their primary controller for the Wii console. They've tried to trademark the phrase Wii Remote, and the Trademark and Patent Office rejected it, saying that Nintendo trademarking the phrase Wii Remote implied that they owned the word remote. And so they used the phrase Wii Remote, but they just had to fall back on the Wii trademark and not trademark the phrase Wii Remote specifically. Meanwhile, there were some patent trolls who had a product called the Wiimote, W-E-E-M-O-T-E, which was a oversized television remote made for use by toddlers, and they were going around sending legal threats to video game websites that use the phrase Wiimote, W-I-I-mote, as shorthand for Wii Remote. And I'm sure if they actually took anyone to court for that, they would have lost, because it's very clearly using it in a different context that they don't actually own the trademark for. But they were basically filing these cease and desist notices to try to attract attention to their product based on the coincidental popularity of Nintendo's Wii and its main controller being the Wii Remote. So, each version contains a different set of monsters. Yeah, it's worth a try for free to publicity. Unfortunately, the only context in which anyone ever knew of that product was not as a remote for small children, but as a bunch of awful patent trolls who were harassing people just for talking about Nintendo controllers that had nothing to do with their product. So, yeah, they often say that no publicity is bad publicity, but I beg to differ in some cases. So, during the course of play, chosen monsters gain strength just like characters in a regular RPG party. You have many monsters from which to choose, but most players tend to stick to a couple of favorites since it takes so much time to build up extra monsters. The coolest part of the game is the trading option. When two Pocket Monster players use the Game Link to hook up their Game Boys, they can transfer monster data from one game to the other. Whether it's red or green version, you can boost the strength by leaps and bounds by importing the best monsters from both versions into your current game. Some players are so enamored of Pocket Monsters that they have purchased both versions in order to own all the monsters. With both games, they could play up the best monsters and transfer them all into their current game. STSH helps them live again. So go find, if you can find a W-E-E-M-O-T-E Wiimote, it's probably not very common. I don't think it's sold very well. So there you have it, the first mention right here, alongside Super Mario RPG coverage and teases of Nintendo 64 in North America, the emerging Pocket Monsters craze in Japan. Now I did not have this magazine back in the day, but I did definitely first learn of Pokemon in a similar little sidebar passing mention in another magazine, probably Electronic Gaming Monthly. So let's check out here. At this point, what have we got here? We've got, I think, some Banjo... So here we've got... So that was... Let me just check. That was May of 1996. And so the next major mention of Pokemon again, apparently was in... Oh, a year later. Actually, this might even be 2 years later. And notice we have a, Ken Griffey Jr., Mariners player on the cover of Nintendo Power. Nintendo owned the Mariners at that point, so how convenient. But, yeah, so Pokemon whereas in Japan, Pokemon is coming out before Nintendo 64 was on the market. In Japan, by the time they're gearing up for the release of Pokemon, we already have the, well into N64's life cycle coverage of Banjo-Kazooie. So we will, so where's the coverage of Pokemon here? It's a little further down. It's more, so we have coverage of Star Fox 64. Okay. Actually, this is just what we wanted. This is just what we wanted here. So at this point, and I remember at this point reading, the coverage of when, in other magazines, not Nintendo Power, of the infamous photosensitivity episode of event in Pokemon, literally an episode, in which some flashing electric animation effects triggered photosensitivity symptoms. and sent many viewers to the hospital in Japan. It was sort of a global news event, and it was a lot of the world outside of Japan's first exposure to pocket monsters. But this is at this point, Nintendo has dedicated to actually localizing the game. They're using Japanese screenshots of the game. And these screenshots these sprites appear to be from the Japanese blue version, which is what they use for the red and blue in Japan. So, the Pokémon are coming. The Pokémon are coming. These mini monsters will be landing on our shores this September, courtesy of Nintendo's Pokémon for the Game Boy. And the Pokémon are coming, and Nintendo Power has the scoop. Now, Monster Mania. We still have Japanese screenshots at this point. Japan, and mind you, this is on the kind of... As they very quickly decided to avoid use of the phrase monster in relation to Pokemon in North American terminology. There's also a bit of an aspect in which the English word, the English word monster, has an implication of strange creature, sort of in Japan. Whereas in the Western world, the English word monster has maybe more negative connotations, thinking of the likes of, Frankenstein's monster or Dracula or werewolves in their more traditional depictions. So eventually they sort of settle on the phrasing of the word Pokemon, localizing it here with the accented E, so pronounced as in cafe. It always fascinated me, even as a child. I knew the word cafe. I knew the word resume, having that accented E. So when Pokemon with the E being accented, okay, I understood. Pokemon. Most kids my age wouldn't have been aware of that, but it really fascinated me the way a lot of adults decided somehow that it was called Pokemon. Like the E without the accent, and then man instead of mon, like it was something they thought it, like Pokemon was a character like Superman or Batman or something. Adults in America, I don't get it. I don't get it. The same thing, like you have people who called the cookies, a brand of cookies, Chips Ahoy. My father would always call them Chip Ahoys. And it's not the only person. People would call them Chip Ahoys. The name of them was Chips Ahoy, not Chip Ahoys. The strangest thing like that, I think, from my dear old dad was he was a gamer. He was the one I'd watch play Star Fox 64 all the way to Andros. I wasn't that talented back then. So this is not someone who was not into gaming. He played as many as, if not more, video games than me because I had to go to school all day, whereas he worked a job with somewhat flexible hours. But he called the Sega Dreamcast Dreamskate. I don't know where he got that from. He consistently referred to it as Dreamskate instead of Dreamcast. And it wasn't even ironic or making fun of it. He just thought it was called Dreamskate for some reason. Whatever. Love you, Dad. Thanks for getting me an N64. I didn't even ask for one. Thanks, parents. But anyway, Japan is being overrun by monsters. No, they're not toppling skyscrapers or crushing army tanks, but they're holding the hearts of players in a seemingly unbreakable grip. They're the Pokémon, also known as pocket monsters in Japan, and for the last 2 years, practically no one in Japan, young or old, has been safe from their ferocious charm. Their furred and fanged faces adorn nearly every kind of product imaginable, including books, toys, games, clothing, music CDs, and even snack foods. In all, over 600 Pokemon-related products are now available in Japan, and the craze shows no sign of slowing down. So the next segment, red and blue. So, in this caption for the screenshot, the Japanese version of Pokemon for Game Boy sold over 8 million copies in just 2 years. But where did the Pokemon come from? They didn't just pop out of thin air onto the size of lunchboxes. In fact, the entire craze began with the Pokemon role-playing game for Game Boy. Now Nintendo is preparing to release Pokemon here, and there will not be one but two versions of the game, a red edition and a blue edition. Why two versions? To answer that question, we'll have to start with the game's basics. Combat, Capture, Customize. The primary goal in Pokemon is to capture and train various monsters, all in an effort to become the world's greatest Pokemon trainer. You'll choose one of 3 tamed starter monsters at the beginning of the game to help you capture other monsters. Amazing abilities. To capture a wild Pokemon, you'll have to wear it down in combat, then trap it inside a device called a Monster Ball. Rather than doing battle yourself, however, your Pokemon will fight for you, gaining experience and learning new skills over time. Pokemon will have the potential to master all sorts of amazing abilities like breathing fire, summoning tornadoes, hypnotizing foes, and so on. Since you'll be able to choose which skills your Pokemon will learn, you'll even be able to customize them according to your tastes. With the proper care and training, your monsters will become stronger, learn new skills, and maybe even transform into entirely new creatures. Now, no two Pokemon are exactly alike, and individual monsters evolve from different types of combat training. So, scrolling down here, Master your destiny. Master of your destiny. Now, it's real. I never read this back in the day. I read this since then in scans, but I never saw this back in the day. I just became aware that, okay, Nintendo's actually going to bring Pokemon over to the US, and I was curious as to whether or not it would take off here. I was very fascinated because I was very conscious of the way the Pokemon phrase, which, aside from Super Mario Brothers and Sonic the Hedgehog, I'd say Pac-Man was probably the biggest, like, cultural phenomenon in terms of a game, in terms of spin-offs, a cartoon series, breakfast cereal, different food and merchandise, clothing, music CDs, products, you know? So there will be 150 different Pokemon in the game, and each one you capture will be recorded automatically in your monster logbook. Even if you fail to catch your quarry, the computer will make a note of the battle. As you scour the countryside for new monsters, you'll also encounter various obstacles and enemies, including rival Pokemon trainers and members of the notorious Team Rocket, a society of villains bent on conquering the world. While you won't be able to capture your rival's tame Pokemon, fighting them will give your monsters valuable combat experience. Once you've defeated all your enemies, you'll win the coveted title of Pokemon Master. Collecting craze. They keep mentioning 150 Pokemon. They are now over 1,000 Pokemon. I caught nearly all of them right before Sun and Moon came out, and I haven't kept up since. And that's in terms of a living dex, as they call it, where you have one actual example of each creature, not just completing the actual Pokédex in terms of the logbook. So, becoming a Pokemon Master will obviously be an important goal in the game, but the greater challenge and fun will be collecting all 150 Pokemon. While it will be impossible to find all the monsters your first time through the game, your monster log will be stored in permanent memory file. When you complete a game and... No! This is... Okay. When you complete a game and start a new one, your collection will remain intact. That is not the case. I don't know how this information got around, but it was even included in the official Pokemon Player's Guide, causing lots of kids to restart their game and being confused that they lost all their Pokemon. The game only has one save file with no persistence of memory. So, if you start a new file. So, 1 + 1 equals too much fun. What's even more exciting is the fact that you'll be able to trade monsters with other players through the Game Boy's link cable. Now, the link cable was a popular enough feature of the Game Boy. You know, literally LAN, local network gaming through a physical cable. But it was Pokemon that really made the link cable into a blockbuster product for the Game Boy. Very late into what would have been the Game Boy's original model Game Boy's lifespan, Pocket Monsters, its craze and its eruption in Japan as a social phenomenon really extended many years of life onto the 8-bit Game Boy line and even the black and white Game Boy line in particular. So they cover the trading of Pokemon between players, and even when I first got my copy of Pokémon Red, the watercolor artwork you see here of the different characters and creatures really caught my attention, and that's really when this artwork here was the first time I really became consciously aware of watercolor as something that could be used outside of the very simple artwork done by children. So here you have teasings of the Pokemon trading card game, teasings of the Pokemon anime. Now, strangely enough, Jesse and James of Team Rocket here. Now, Team Rocket are a sort of a evil crime syndicate, actually kind of a borderline like militia or terrorist group in the Pokemon world, as they're depicted in the games for the most part. In the anime, Team Rocket also exists in terms of the massive organization of grunts who steal Pokemon and do evil missions for their boss Giovanni. But here we've got Jesse and James, who are the duo of Team Rocket that particularly stalk and attack Ash Ketchum and his friends here, the main characters of the anime. But for some normal Team Rocket operatives wear black uniforms. Jesse and James wear unique white uniforms. But here they are, I don't know why, but here they are depicted wearing black uniforms, which happened a couple of times throughout the early anime when they were specifically trying to blend in as regular Team Rocket troopers for sort of different covert reasons to sort of sabotage other Team Rocket members. But it really wasn't until the early Pokemon Black and White era, for about a dozen or so episodes, Jesse and James actually wore the traditional black uniforms of Team Rocket. And here we have teasings of all the merchandise, and that's the end of the coverage there. So now I want to show off. We have to wait for a moment, but while we wait for the audio is going to start echoing soon, and when it echoes, I'm going to pay attention into my audio. But when it echoes, that's a good thing. We want that to happen because that means we're ready to actually watch the promotional videotape. I did not see this videotape at the time, but it was something Nintendo mailed out to everyone subscribed to Nintendo Power to sort of prime the pump and get their Nintendo Power subscribers excited about Pokemon, not just in terms of the actual game, but in terms of Pokemon as a media franchise. You know, the games, the cartoon, and this is at a point where the phrase anime was kind of something that was really more reserved for hardcore enthusiasts. That's the more casual term, the term, okay, good, we're ready. We are ready for, hold on. We are ready for, we gotta go to, alright, good, we're ready. So, what we've got here is that video. I'll be pausing here and there. But after this, it'll be time. We'll I want to take a look at something. Do I have the manual ready? Yes, I do have the manual ready. But let's start the videotape now. For full disclosure, there are sections of this tape that contain actual material from the Pokemon anime. Some of it is stuff that is unique to this tape in terms of anime scenes. But for stuff that I know would have appeared in actual episodes, I have muted it. And aside from muting it, I have also put snow over the screen to obscure it, so hopefully we won't have any copyright problems. So let's get started.
You've been selected to receive the sneak peek about a phenomenon called Pokémon, a hit TV show, a Game Boy game, and loads of other cool things that are about to take America by storm!
They did a similar tape like this for Yu-Gi-Oh! A few years later.
At Pokemon.
Actually, only 3 years later, thinking back on it. So this here appears to be an unused version, like something they made as a possible main theme for the Pokemon anime that they ended up not using. The only time I know of it actually being used is right here in this videotape. And they never released this track on the CD or anything like that, or used in the anime, but they did do like a dance remix of it that they put in the To Be a Master Pokemon anime soundtrack CD, and they used it in the commercial for Pokemon the first movie, the Western release. Oh yeah, yeah, so we have this Pokemon theme that could have been. It's catchy, but nowhere near as catchy or as marketable or as memorable as the theme they actually went with. Oh, and here, okay, I want to rewind a bit. Okay, so there, That is a scene from the first episode of the Pokemon anime, and that Pokemon actually is a Ho-Oh. And a Pokemon that would appear in the sequel to Pokemon Red and Blue, Pokemon 2, so to speak, that being Pokemon Gold and Silver. And it was the first reveal of that Pokemon to the public as far as I'm aware. So even this early on, we already have teasings of, there being Pokemon beyond the 150 that they officially acknowledge in the games and that existed in the games. With one extra 151st Pokemon being revealed later on as a secret.
Well, it all...
Yeah, so here... so here we have Ash's mom, Hillary. Did you know that Ash had an aunt, Hillary? Neither did I. All right.
Starts with the TV show September 7th. My nephew, Ash, he just turned 10, is the show's star. His dream.
He just turned 10 and he would remain 10 for the next 20-something years as the anime continued.
A Pokemon master.
Now, notice they don't have it nailed down exactly how to pronounce the made-up word Pokemon. So here the actress is saying Pokemon when it's officially pronounced Pokemon. And the first couple dozen episodes of the anime, the voice actors for the dub say Pokemon or Pokemon rather than Pokemon. That accented E isn't really firmly established yet.
This is no easy task.
Yeah, Azure is saying Simpson
Ash
syndrome.
has to capture all of these little Pokemon things, and they're pretty tricky.
Yeah, so here's an actual clip from the Pokemon anime. I muted it because this is an actual just straight up clip from as it appears in the final show. This is from I believe the first episode of the series. First or second episode, I believe. But, no, this is from the second episode, I'm pretty sure. But, what we've got with the Pokemon anime is actually, even though I was following it, I was interested, I knew it came out in North America, I really was not interested until my dear mother, I guess, was reading about, probably in USA Today or something similar, the coverage that existed, this Pokemon thing is coming out and it's already popular. And Ashrest in chat is saying, never grow up, established by Peter Pan. I mean, never grow up, I'm in my 30s.
Each one is totally different from the other.
I'm talking about the Pokemon anime. I might as well replay this clip. So I came on board Pokemon around around the time of the first airing of the Ghost of Maiden's Peak was the first or second episode of Pokemon. But I came to watch it. I came to watch that because my mom was like, do you want me to wake you up early before school? And on WPIX 11, ironically, by coincidence, but later on, now I actually had that Pikachu figure because I believe that's the Pikachu figure that came in a keychain and a Pokeball. But Azure is saying they show again, please. Okay, we'll show the anime clip again. Hopefully, we don't have any copyright problems because of this. But I put plenty of snow over it and muted it, so I watched the Pokemon anime, and I remember actually learning the lore of Pokemon. I was interested because I knew the Pokemon anime had an accident where it caused seizures in Japan, so I just wanted to see, just because I had been kind of following the social phenomenon, the craze, fad of Pokemon in Japan, and I was like, okay, they brought the anime over, they're going to come out with the games, I'll actually watch this. And it was a couple dozen episodes in, I think, when I first started watching. And it was around the time of the Ghost of Maiden's Peak, and I remember watching and trying to figure out, okay, are there one of each Pokemon? Is each creature unique? There's only one of it? Or are they many of them like animals? And then with the Ghost of Maiden's Peak was an unusual episode because you have Team Rocket's Meowth, voiced at the time by the late, great Maddie Blaustein. As the voice actress, and at the same time we got in that episode a talking Ghastly, and it's not common for Pokemon to be able to speak human language. So for my first episode, or one of my first, to have not one, but the unique talking Pokemon in the form of Meowth, but also a talking Ghastly, I was very confused as to whether or not Pokemon could talk, because I'm like, why could some of them speak English, but then some of them only say their names? Is there only one of each Pokemon? I was kind of confused.
There are 150 of them.
And Azrath, I think, is alluding to Ash's aunt here depicted is kind of has a hairstyle reminiscent of the late Princess Diana. And here we have the Poké-Rap, which is an ingenious concept where, before the credits of each episode of Pokemon, oh hey, thanks for the subscription, Bill. Never necessary, always deeply appreciated. Yeah, thanks for the, just watching and being here with me, whether you are active in chat or standing guard in my silent squad.
Wait, there's more.
Is more support than I could possibly hope for. But what the Poké-Rap was, which I muted so to avoid copyright problems, but the Poké-Rap was a sequence where they take about a dozen or 25 or so Pokemon is names. More support than I could possibly hope for. What the Poké-Rap was, doggone. Okay, there we go.
Well, there's Brock. He's a good guy. Ash challenged him once at the gym in Pewter City, but now they're buds and they're on the journey together. And then Team Rocket.
So I was a little. So if you look at these kids here, I was older than these kids, but I was definitely on the upper range of the. I was within the target market audience, like other. I was in the target age range, but on the very upper edges of the target age range. So I got to be one of the first kids to get made fun of for still liking Pokemon. Because the thing is, I was always aware of the way they were marketing, and I was always fascinated by commercials. And so what have you missed so far? You missed, I played Pokemon Pinball for about 15 minutes. Then we read a Nintendo Power little blurb, less than a quarter of a page of text about explaining, there's this Pocket Monsters RPG for Game Boy in Japan with 2 editions, and it's become very popular. The first, and this is in '96, the first mention of Pokemon by Nintendo of America, and that's not from a Nintendo Power, but in EGM I read a similar blurb. That was my first contact with Pokemon. Then we read, around the time this video was mailed out, the actual preview of the Pokemon franchise, explaining the games and the anime and the card game in an issue of Nintendo Power a couple years later. And so here we're watching a videotape that was sent out specifically to you missed some magazine coverage, but we are going to be looking at the manual now in later later streams. We will be covering later different magazine coverage and the player's guide, so you didn't miss all of the magazines. There's still going to be more to come, and my VODs of course will be available up on YouTube, where I will be posting this. So these kids are very clearly I was an actor. I was doing professional acting when I was younger than these two, so whether they were reading from a teleprompter or memorized their lines, bless their cute little hearts.
It's at the gym in Pewter City.
And here they are explaining, in the words of the writers, how to hype kids up on the Pokemon cartoon series.
To protect the world from devastation.
To unite all peoples within our nation.
To denounce the evils of truth and love.
To extend our reach to the stars above.
Jesse.
James.
Yeah, so for those who aren't familiar with that is the Team Rocket motto. Whenever Team Rocket would appear in the anime, they'd always recite this sort of Pledge of Allegiance type thing about their mission as Team Rocket agents to spread chaos and do dastardly deeds. And it was a convenient way to always eat up about a minute of script time without having to fill it up with actual content. Now, they did usually always animate unique deliveries of the motto. And throughout the more than 20 years that this anime went on, in which Jesse and James were constantly the main arch nemesis of Ash and his friends, on nearly every single episode, they'd always recite a different version of the Team Rocket motto. Every 2 or 3 years, they would usually change up to a new motto. But this was their classic original Team Rocket motto.
They want to steal Pikachu away from Ash to fulfill their evil boss's diabolical plan for total domination.
Yeah, so here we're about to see a sequence. Is anyone rerunning the show now? It's not on television, but it is available on streaming. I believe it's definitely on. A lot of episodes of the do circulate in and out of circulation on on official authorized YouTube channels, and it's also available through, I believe, Netflix. And I definitely have the DVD. I'm looking at it on my shelf right off to the side right now. So this is a sequence taken from episode 15 of the anime. This is episode 15 of the anime was the first time that we actually saw Jesse, James, and Meowth report to their boss, the mysterious boss of Team Rocket, Giovanni. And he was always obscured in shadows, had his voice digitally obscured, like to make his identity anonymous. And Giovanni was voiced by Ted Lewis at this point. Jesse here is voiced by the late Rachel Lillis, who passed away only a few months ago, sadly, after a fight with cancer that she was very open about publicly. James is going to be voiced by Ted Lewis, who voiced the first couple of dozen episodes, the first dozen or so episodes of the Pokemon anime. By the time they actually got to dubbing episode 15, James would be instead voiced by Eric Stewart, who very much followed in line with Ted Lewis's interpretation of the character. Yeah, I think she was the voice of Jigglypuff singing as well. Jigglypuff being a Pokemon who is infamous for putting people to sleep with its singing. And Meowth here, one of the few talking Pokemon, was voiced by the late Maddie Blaustein, a native of Long Island. Because when you tell a Long Islander that when you treat a Long Island as a single place, native Long Islanders get pissed. But when you talk about like someone famous or something cool happening on Long Island, it'd be like, oh, Maddie Blaustein, oh yeah, they were from Long Island, yeah. Or Reggie Fils-Aimé, oh yeah, Reggie, he was from Long Island native hype. So the late Maddie Blaustein voiced Meowth here. And so this was dubbed specifically for the anime, for this videotape, to make it talk like sort of fourth wall breaking, where Giovanni is telling Jesse and James to capture Ash Ketchum's Pikachu. Now, there's this running shtick where Jesse, James, and Meowth decide for some reason that Ash's Pikachu is the rarest and most powerful of all Pokemon. When Pikachu is actually a very common Pokemon, but they got this sort of delusion where they think that if they could capture Pikachu and present it to the boss, that their boss is going to promote them and make them top captains of Team Rocket. In reality, Giovanni never wanted Ash's Pikachu at all, but here they're actually going along with this shtick to sort of establish these characters and their motivations and to fourth wall break a bit. So they have sort of some fun with this.
Team Rocket, blast off at the speed of light. Surrender now or prepare to fight. Attention!
At your service.
Meow, Toaster.
Everything is proceeding exactly as I have foreseen. The Pokemon craze is sweeping the world.
Yeah, have kind of a Dr. Claw thing going on with the anonymous identity of this mysterious evil boss.
Oh, then try harder. And you better steal Pikachu away from them soon, because the TV show is about to launch. And the Game Boy game, and the toys, the card game, comic books. Soon the whole world will be looking for Pikachu. Does anyone else know of our plans?
Only a bunch of kids who were lucky enough to get their hands on this video.
Well, if they don't play
like
the Game
me?
Boy game or watch
Well, not me at
they'll
the time.
never catch Pikachu.
Pika who?
Yeah, explaining who
I was glad to find
or
out
what
that Ash's
Pikachu
first
is.
Pokemon was in fact little Pikachu. And, okay, Pikachu doesn't like being transported in the Pokeball, And it doesn't talk much, and when it does, all it can say is, Pikachu.
Oh yeah, and for official purposes and official styling, Pokemon receive the gender-neutral object pronoun it. And I've read some official style guides have leaked for the Pokemon franchise over the years. They very specifically say Pokemon should be typically referred to as it. Try to avoid using personalized, sort of maybe anthropomorphized gendered pronouns for Pokemon. Ash's Pikachu sometimes is allowed to be called him. For some reason, Ash's Snivy, a couple decades about down the line, in the Pokemon Black and White era, a female Snivy, like even Pokemon whose genders are specifically known, are still traditionally referred to with it. So,
Don't be deceived.
there's a bit of styling interest here.
Unleash electric potential and electromotive forces equal to the difference in
Yeah,
constant
they've been
current of
neutered.
1,000 amperes when the power dissipates between points. Well, let's just say that little Pikachu.
Yeah, another trivia of the style guides and style guidelines. Very rarely are Pokemon, other than with the specific exception of Kangaskhan, which is a Pokemon that has like a kangaroo-like pouch in which there is a young Kangaskhan in its pouch. But Pokemon are very seldom permitted to be described as being the parents of other Pokemon. There was within the last 2 or 3 years, there was a relatively later episode of Pokemon where there are an Umbreon and an Espeon that are raising an Eevee. And the Eevee is very clearly intended to be the Umbreon and Espeon's pup. But because of the style guide prohibitions on Pokemon being parents of other Pokemon, they refer to the Eevee as their friend. Or in the 13th Pokemon movie, there is a Zoroark that is caring for a Zorua, the pre-evolved form of Zoroark, and they keep making specific references to, oh, it's the Zoroark that it's raising as though it were its own, when it's very clearly supposed to be its mother. So they have to play some weird games sometimes to get around some of these styling
What I like best about Ash and Pikachu, though, is how they bond.
Style guide references.
Loyalty. Now, there's a quality you can't teach in the classroom.
So, another interesting thing of note here, and the background, this is supposed to be taking place within the Pokemon world. But in the background, we see a map of our world. We see North and South America, we see Africa, and the Eurasian continent. And this was before it was established that Pokemon takes place on a different world. There are actually references to the United States in Pokemon Red's script. There is one gym leader called Lieutenant Surge, the Lightning American.
Quality you can't teach in the classroom.
Yeah, so at the time, they're not quite sure yet if Pokemon coexist alongside animals.
Misty met Ash when he took her bike
So
to
here's,
Pikachu to a hospital. But he got burned to a crisp by one of Pikachu's electrical bolts. So now she's on the journey with them.
So here we've
But
got
I don't see the point. Misty doesn't
a room
need
decked out
She's got
in
skills
Pokemon
of her
merchandise.
own. You should see her
Before
in
that,
battle with her
for
water
the set,
Pokemon. She really
before
knows
this
her
episode
strategy.
actually,
She's even brave enough to take
Now,
on Team Rocket. all by
Misty and
herself.
Brock are actually the first two gym leaders you encounter. Now, this is just an extended scene from the Pokemon anime, so I just went ahead and cut this from the episode.
strategy. To become a great trainer, Ash has to capture all of these amazing Pokemon creatures. And there's a lot he's got to know in order to catch them all. Gotta catch them all! That's why Professor Oak gave him his first Pokédex.
Gotta catch
It's
them
the
all.
newest
What a
model with the latest
fantastic
digital
piece
technology
of
that will
branding,
give
a
Ash
fantastic
instant
piece of
Pokemon
copywriting.
information with greater
A
clarity
short,
and better reception than ever
catchy
before.
call to action, encouraging
upgrade my
consumers to just...
I am Dexter.
Now, this clip here is interesting. Now, this is something I actually saw back in the day. When I first got internet access via AOL 3.0 dial-up internet, I went on the Pokemon website, and back when you had to wait, I had to wait maybe 10 or 15 minutes for this video to load up. But this is a video explaining the concept of catching Pokemon. And because this sequence, in terms of the voice acting, is not something that actually appears in any particular episode, it's the voice actor that provides the voice of the Pokedex. Now, the Pokedex here, this red device, inspired by the Game Boy itself, is actually the device that Ash uses to find data on Pokemon. And in the Pokemon games, you scan Pokemon and capture them in order to add more data to this device. And now in an age before smartphones, before even a lot of adults had cell phones, this is very high-tech science fiction stuff. Now, my actual smartphone, I could take a photograph of an animal and get instantly an encyclopedic index of what species it is. So this technology has actually come about into the real world. When they did Pokédex 3D, a Pokemon sort of program for the Pokédex program for the Nintendo 3DS, they actually got the voice actor who voiced Dexter, the AI within the Pokédex, to say the names of all the Pokemon, which is cool. So it's like, yeah, like Pokemon Go really is kind of it's really a lot of, it's an interesting conceptualization, gamification of aspects of the actual original Pokemon games.
For the exclusive use of Ash Ketchum, a Pokemon trainer in the making. My function, to illuminate and educate the young beginner to the ways of the Pokemon. My data banks contain all available knowledge currently on file
Dexter
for the
explain
150 known species, with many more Pokemon
Star
still
Trek,
to be discovered.
The idea of handheld computers was so fascinating. And I remember
I'm part
being
of the
like,
fire element monsters.
Like in the mid-90s.
This is a Pokeball.
In the world of Pokemon, 10-year-olds are eligible to become Pokemon trainers. Ash received his first Pokemon, Pikachu, from Professor Oak and began his long journey.
Yeah, being fascinated by the concept of handheld computers, and now it's been realized.
I will be the greatest Pokemon trainer! The greatest Pokemon...
It takes real skill, real strategy. And
And
Ash
here
has
they
always
explain
shown
the
determination
strategic
in class.
aspects. You notice some Japanese Pokemon cards because the English Pokemon cards had the Western versions.
Do I think he's got what it takes to be a Pokemon master? Yes. Yes, I do. I think Ash can cut it.
Why was he? I'll tell you why. So, in that clip, we have to pull this up. So here, this is a sequence. I guess they needed a cool sequence of, the sequence of Ash saying, "I'm going to be the best Pokemon trainer." This is in episode 1 of the anime where Ash was holding a Voltorb alarm clock as though it were a Pokeball. And Voltorb being a Pokemon that resembles a Pokeball. And speaking of Nintendo alarm clocks, I actually do have a Nintendo alarm clock. I tried to wake up with it this morning, but coincidentally, I had woken up just early, just because I'm so synced with my normal wake-up time. But I don't want to talk too much about that now.
I like the fact that capturing a Pokemon takes real skill, real strategy. And Ash has always showed determination.
Yeah,
in class.
that's why. You remembered,
what
Bill.
takes
You
to
just forgot that
be a
you
Pokemon
remembered.
master. Yes. Yes, I do. I think Ash can cut it.
To become a great Pokemon trainer, Ash must catch as many as possible by battling his own Pokemon.
Azurest, are you referring to Ash's teacher, depicted by the live-action actor, kind of resembling Michael Jackson?
Pokemon has been weakened in the battle. Ash can catch it within a Pokemon.
I remember this clip from the Pokemon website.
Become loyal to Ash, who must choose the correct type of Pokemon to use when battling with another. Like a rock, paper, scissors match, it's all about strategy. There are 15 Pokemon types, including
is Ash
electric,
describing his
flying,
crotch?
bug, grass, fire,
Who
and
knows?
water.
I'm not rewinding back to see.
Nintendo Power magazine has
Oh.
a 36-page insert. The next 6 issues will have them. They're full of maps.
Yeah, so
and
I never
strategies
had
that will
Nintendo
help you
Power
be
at the
a
time
better
these Pokemon
player
Power
when the
inserts were
Game
coming
Boy
out, so we're gonna
comes
actually take a
Both
look at
versions,
those.
Red and blue. And here's a tip from Dexter. Collecting is the key. The more you
All right.
need both versions, red and
Yeah, so I remember I had been captured by the Pokemon anime. Like, I'd been watching, episode after episode, going to school, talking with other kids about it, and now I started thinking, I remember the specific day in my, special education math class, and being bored, gazing out the window, and thinking about Pokemon, and I'm like, I really enjoy this world, this setting. And I remember specifically thinking, as though it were something from a cheesy commercial, I'm like, I love like the world of Pokemon, you know, going on adventures with these creatures with superpowers and exploring the world together. And I want to explore more than just I want to actually experience this. I want to play the actual games. I remember in my special ed math class thinking that. And that's when I actually asked my parents for it. And it's like, hey, if you get a good report card, you know, when the semester comes up, you know, we'll take you to the game shop and we'll get you a copy. And I chose red. I had to choose. I'm like, I couldn't. My favorite color was green at that time. If green had been released instead of the blue version, I probably would have got green. But red or blue, I think more of my friends had blue. So that's why I chose red.
Blue. And here's a tip from Dexter. Collecting is the key. The more monsters you collect, the better trainer you will be. So if you read the inserts and watch the shows, you'll have what it takes to be a great Pokemon master.
Now notice here, hold on. Notice here.
Master.
So here we have the screenshot. Oh, look at this. Oh, okay. I did not realize this. This is very interesting. So here, oops, I accidentally over-enlarged the video. We're gonna have to resize that. Gonna have to resize that just a little. There we go. There we go. Yeah. So here it says the Pokemon Ash is using is Bulbasaur. A trainer's Pokemon is Pidge. Not Pidge, P-I-D-G-E-Y, but just Pidge. So at this point, they're still using some unfinalized English names for the Pokemon, which is fascinating. Now, but notice it says Ash used Pokeball. You get to name the player character. The default names of your player character are red if you're playing red version, blue if you're playing blue version, and then the second name, other than just the name. Now, canonically, this character eventually became established as being known as Red. But because of the character in the anime clearly being based on the character in the show, and to tie it in, Ash is the first default name, and most people, and like most official sources, named this character Ash. And once it became more firmly established that the character from the game was named Red, and the Ash was the unique interpretation of the character for the anime, you kind of would get made fun of, like, amongst online snobby elitists who would have been all adults at this point for calling the character or naming the character Ash. Everyone either called this character Ash in their game. They either named him Ash or named them after themselves.
So you, Trey.
Now notice they don't show much footage from the actual game.
This is Pocket Pikachu.
Now here it's called Pocket Pikachu. Which is the name in Japan. They localized this thing as the Pokemon Pikachu, the Pokemon virtual pet.
But is there really one more adorable than Pikachu? I don't think so.
This is a Pokemon strategy card game.
Now notice they hold the cards. They use a lot of energy cards just from the corners, the corner of one trainer card, and the back of the cards, which says Pocket Monsters card game in English. But these are the Japanese cards. They didn't want to show too much Japanese text on them. This is still at a point where the Japanese origins of a lot of these franchises are still kind of kept on the down low. There are some infamous localization choices where onigiri rice balls in the Pokemon anime were referred to as jelly donuts because they didn't want to try to edit the onigiri out of the frame and replace them with hamburgers or something, which is another localization choice a lot of animes would make even well into the 2000s. And they didn't want to have to explain what a rice ball was, so they just called them jelly donuts. It was absolutely ridiculous.
This card game can help you finesse your Pokemon training skills and then show them off in battle with others.
I'm collecting the Pokemon beanbags toys.
Touch on Pokemon Pikachu, touch on the plush toys, the card game.
You gotta watch Monday through Friday starting September 7th.
And be sure to look on your video's mailing label.
And you know what they were really smart, because you know what they did with the original run of the Pokemon anime. They ran it 5 days a week before school started. So all the kids on the school bus are going to be talking about the day's episode of Pokemon. That's exactly what happened.
The Pokemon TV showtime and station.
And it's funny because for me, my local Pokemon affiliate was WPIX, the WB. And by coincidence, because it was on, for some people watched Pokemon on Fox on its original run on weekdays, some watched it on other local channels. Coincidentally, Kids WB ended up scoring the deal to run Pokemon later on into what later became known as the Indigo League era, the era that sort of covered the locations and sort of adapted the events of the original games. Became a Kids WB Saturday morning exclusive and only aired once a week on Saturday morning. But from the original weekday morning slot, it coincidentally ended up being on my local WPIX affiliate, beamed off of the North Tower of the World Trade Center back in those days, where I lived in the New York City metropolitan area.
Oh, that must be the Pokecar. And be sure to watch out for it, too. 10 Pokecars will be cruising around giving away
these are
lots of free
Pikachu
stuff.
themed Volkswagen Beetles. This is like a sort of, they knew they were going to use a Volkswagen Beetle, but the final version ended up being more specifically themed around Pikachu with a tail on the back. And they didn't really, they kind of, like, just, this is some kind of mock-up they didn't actually go with.
You can track where they are on your computer. www.pokemon.com.
And surprisingly, even, this is in like 98, even by 99, whenever they reference the internet or go to a certain website, they'd always say, ask parents' permission before going online. So,
Remember, it's about strategy.
Gotta catch 'em all, gotta catch 'em all. Remember, you gotta catch 'em all. Gotta catch 'em all.
yeah, just bombard us with those messages. Just bombard us. Now this tape, now Bill Preston in chat is asking, pretty big marketing commitment there. How far into Pokemon's lifespan in the U.S. was this? This is before Pokemon hit the United States. So this is before the Pokemon trading card game had been translated. This is they're still using beta localized names of Pokemon in the few screenshots they showed. Now they're smart not to show too much from the Game Boy game, because it's a black and white Game Boy game and it's an RPG at a time when RPGs were not as popular as they would be just a year or two later. Final Fantasy VII was still sort of in the midst of being, like a phenomenon in the West, being the first real breakout Final Fantasy game outside of the small handful of enthusiasts who were following the Final Fantasy games on Super Nintendo. So the role-playing games were difficult to market. They were sort of a niche thing, and Nintendo Power, they were pushed and promoted and explained in a special segment called Epic Center, specifically made to sort of promote the popularity of RPGs to Western audiences. So they decided not to show too much footage from the Game Boy game, and also it's a black and white Game Boy game, and the technology that powered Pokemon is they could have created Pokemon back in 1989 on Game Boy. This game was just as possible in 96 when it came out in Japan and 98 when it came out in America as it would have been in 1989 on the original Game Boy. Yeah, so so that's the promotional video. Yeah, so this is priming the pump for Pokemon's landfall in the Western world in North America. So I told you I watched about, I think, what issue, hold on, what episode, I want to type in real quick. I want to type in, while we wait for the desktop audio to mute, because the desktop audio will need to be muted for the rest of the stream. In the meantime, we'll, I know there's no audio now, but, I want to type in, I want to see which episode of Pokemon was Ghost of Maiden's Peak. Ghost of Maiden's Peak. Okay, Ghost of Maiden's Peak was the 20th episode. So, in the U.S. airing sequence. So I started watching Pokemon because Postman's Peak was like the first or second episode I saw. And so that means, 5 days a week, 5, 10, 15, 20. So I saw Pokemon around 5 weeks into its North American airing. So very early on. And I watched for probably 2 or 3 weeks before I realized, like, you know what? I like this world. I like the concept of the, I like creatures and monsters. And I like, going on adventures, that which are the main themes of the anime. I like the idea of exploring the world, going to new places. So I'm like, I realized that fateful math class that morning was like, you know what? I want the Game Boy games. I want to experience more of this world by playing the actual Game Boy games. And that's when I got my mom to take me to the store and get my copy of Pokemon. Now let's, when my report card came in and it had good grades on it. Now, the funny thing about Pokemon, from my perspective, as far as a Game Boy game, is that it was, in fact, the very first and only Game Boy game that I had purchased brand new. Because I had lots of Game Boy games. They were either games I got used from Funko Land, or when I got my initial library, they were all used games. So it was unique to actually unbox a brand new Game Boy game, see a brand new shiny cartridge case back when the cartridge shipped with cases in the game box. And reading the copy on the back. I don't have a copy handy, but it mentions you finally got old enough for your Pokemon Trainer's license. The idea of a Pokemon Trainer's license, it's kind of referenced through the ID card in the game. It's not really referenced much, but and it says reading skills required to enjoy the entertaining story. I'm like, okay, so the game's actually going to have a story and a plot progression like in the anime. So I remember opening up my copy. And it's kind of funny because how this happened was, we went to the I think Funko Land. It was definitely a standalone game store, or it might have been KB. But I remember seeing the games in the case behind the cashier, and he's like, okay. And I remember the cashier kind of playing into it, and he really enjoying. He's like, okay, now's your big choice. Are you gonna get the red version or the blue version? And I was all excited. I'm like, okay, I already decided I was gonna get red because I think most of my friends had blue. And if I knew Meowth was blue version exclusive, I probably would have got blue. But I made my choice. I unwrapped the game. I had my Game Boy ready. The batteries were in there. I probably popped out my copy of... it probably would have been Super Mario... It probably would have been Wario Land or Super Mario Land 2, or maybe Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. And popped in Pokemon. But first I did read the manual. Because this was back at a time when it was very important to follow a game, to understand a game. You often did have to read the manual for lots of platformers, games that didn't have much in-game dialogue or manual. Now, the cool thing they did with a manual for Pokemon Red and Blue is they made the manual look like a Safari notebook here. You see, the ring binding on the side. And, actually... So, we're gonna zoom in here. And zoom out a little tiny bit. So, you have a disclaimer here. This is the blue version of Pokemon. There are other versions too. The story and characters are the same for all versions. The differences between the versions are the type and probability of Pokemon appearances. To complete your collection, you'll need to trade with a friend who has another version. Now, this is before... At this point, there's already hype and pre-release screenshots going around on the internet and in Japanese gaming media of Pokemon 2, as it was known then, Pokemon Gold and Silver, back before it was even a Game Boy Color game. So, story. You are 11-year-old. I think, it's funny, in the game it says 11 here, but in the anime I believe Ash is supposed to be 10. Hold on. Got a little cough there. Alright. You are an 11-year-old boy living in Pallet Town with your mother. Your rival lives next door to you. You and your rival used to play nicely together when you were little, but lately he has become mean. He sees you as his rival because you are the same age and height. Yeah, little kids can be petty like that. As much as we like to romanticize childhood, little kids can be rather petty. When you hear that Professor Oak is a Pokemon expert, you get excited because you are a curious boy. You walk outside of Pallet Town in search of Pokemon and you hear a voice. Hey, don't go into the grass. It's Professor Oak. There are wild Pokemon living there, he says. They can be very dangerous. Now, here we have this is the character often called Ash, colloquially among kids and amongst a lot of official media. He's ultimately in the game's canon known as Red. A little bit of a edgier, a little more ferocious look to him than Ash Ketchum, perhaps. And it kind of became a sort of this, headcanon thing that Red is this, dark, edgy loner. But if you possess trained Pokemon, you could let them fight against wild ones. Professor Oak takes, and notice the use of the second person pronouns you, really sort of immersing the reader in the role of this player character. Professor Oak takes you to his lab where your rival is waiting. Professor Oak invited him because he is Professor Oak's grandson. Professor Oak instructs you, there are 3 Pokemon here, so choose the one that you like. Now you have a Pokemon, the rest is up to you. Now, notice the beautiful, soft watercolor artwork here. Now here we have a map of the Pokemon world here. This is an engineering blueprint, engineering charts type diagram of the game world here. We start in Pallet Town here. Our route here is going to go like this. We're going to go up. We're going to go north to the east to the Cerulean City. Going to take a detour up to the Sea Cottage, and next we go south through an underground path under Saffron City to Vermilion City. Then we're going to go back up north and then east through Rock Tunnel down to Lavender Town. Our next stop is going to be, I believe at this point, you can do Saffron City. I did not do Saffron City till later, but we go through another underground path, skipping Saffron City again to Celadon City to do something here. Then we go back to Lavender Town, and then we go down through these routes over to Fuchsia City. At this point, we're meant to go south to the Seafoam Islands, and we can use this route here to go to Celadon City direct from Fuchsia. But the Seafoam Islands was a very complicated dungeon. I thought that it was just a cave you explored. I was lost for several days here, and ended up thinking, okay, I'm supposed to go to Cinnabar Island next. I'll just go to Pallet Town and surf south. So I never actually completed Seafoam Island. So, World of Pokemon. What are Pokemon? There are more than 100 Pokemon in existence. The more they fight, the more powerful they become. Pokemon having simple attack techniques such as Tackle or Tail Whip gain stronger new attacks techniques like Bite or Water Gun. Some Pokemon evolve and change in appearance. So here's an example of Pokemon evolving here. Professor Oak, he gives a summary, is a leading expert on Pokemon. Listen to his wise advice. Defeat the 8 Pokemon leaders. Now, at this point, the concept of these being called gym leaders hadn't been finalized. Here, they're called Pokemon leaders. In the world of Pokemon, there are many Pokemon trainers who raise Pokemon for fighting. Only 8 of these trainers are considered to be Pokemon leaders. You can find these leaders hanging out at local gyms, training their Pokemon to become stronger. These leaders are waiting for anyone who wants to challenge them. In order to complete your Pokedex, you must fight these leaders. Now here, the screenshot is from an early version of Pokemon. Now, because of the way the translation and the language styling works from Japanese, the article "the" appears before. Like, there are lots of different archetypes of different types of Pokemon trainers you fight. For instance, there's the junior trainer archetype. There's the gambler archetype. The Rockets, the Team Rocket agents are called Rockets. There's the cue ball, a sort of a rough, sort of a biker gangster type archetype. And here so they put the article "the" in front of all of them, which works for those sort of random NPC trainers where you're fighting sort of these archetypes. But for the Pokemon gym leaders who have individual unique names, it still puts the article "the" in front of them. So it'll say "the Brock wants to fight," the Lieutenant Surge wants to fight. That's something they fixed by the time of the actual release that I'll be playing, by just removing the article the. So it'll just say Brock wants to fight, Cue Ball wants to fight, Rocket wants to fight, so forth. So you talk about completing the Pokédex. And at this point, the Game Boy Pocket is on the market, so that's the model they use in the diagram here, explaining what the different buttons do. But I had the original model Game Boy. So how to erase the file. On the title screen, if you hold the control pad while pressing select and the B button, we can erase the file. We're going to erase the file. I had a game in progress that I started a number of years ago. This will really only be the third or fourth time I'll be playing through this game from beginning to end, and I have not played through Pokemon from beginning to end. I only played through it from beginning to end twice, the original Pokemon. Once back in the day. No, actually, I did play through it from twice back in the day, back in like 99, 2000. Then, in about 2005, I played through about 80% of the game, then my save battery died. And then I played through it again in like 2008. I played through it again from start to finish. And that's the last time I played through this game. A lot of my favorite games of all time, I do not play incessantly. So the cool thing, we're not going to go too deep into this. Now, the genius thing, because the RPG, the role-playing game, is kind of not so popular in the West as it would be, thanks to Final Fantasy VII and Pokemon, which were releasing around this time. The manual of the game starts off, it actually contains a walkthrough through to getting your very first gym badge. So all of this here is a walkthrough of from the start of the game, different maps, some highlights of different creatures you'll encounter, and we have the profile of Brock and his 2 Pokemon he'll be using against you. Now here we have a profiles of the first, and here we have a summary here of things you could do later on after what is covered in the manual. And of course, if you want more gameplay tips, yeah, and this is all just the manual that shipped with the game. Bill Preston Chat is asking if this is just the manual. And I remember being fascinated by, like, man, like, this is so... I started playing, I flipped through, I didn't read through this in detail. We even have lists of the items in the shop and how much money it'll cost in each, how much money it'll cost in each, to buy all the items in the only couple of shops. So here we have the Boulder Badge. Now, in addition to... the badge is a trophy that certifies that you've defeated that Pokemon gym leader. And the badges in this game actually have stat increase effects on your Pokemon and let you use different... The badges also sort of act as licenses that allow your Pokemon to use moves outside of battles with other Pokemon that let you use Flash, for instance, to light up a darkened cave and let you freely explore a cave. Or you could have a Pokemon use the cut using, sharp claws or scythes to be able to cut through a bush that's in your way to be able to reach new areas in the world. So we have the Boulder Badge. Brock's Boulder Badge is first. Then Misty and Cerulean City will give you the Cascade Badge. Lets Pokemon up to level 30 obey you. This is a way so that you couldn't trade with friends to get a Pokemon that was at like level 60 and then use that to rampage through the game. If you do not have a high enough level badge, the Pokemon won't respect your skill as a trainer and will fall asleep and disobey you during battles. So with the second badge, you can use Pokemon up to level 30, and you can use Cut. Now, Lieutenant Surge will let you use Fly outside of battle, and the speed of all Pokemon will increase. Erica of Celadon City will your Rainbow Badge will let you Pokemon up to level 50 obey you. Now, I actually got these 2 badges, the Marsh Badge and the Soul Badge. I believe you could actually get in interchangeable orders. I believe I got the Soul Badge before the Marsh Badge. But the Marsh Badge from Sabrina of Saffron City, Pokemon up to level 70 obey you. The Koga, the ninja-themed leader who gives you the Soul Badge, that lets you use Surf outside of battle. And Blaine of Cinnabar Island. Now, Blaine is interesting, because in this artwork here, he looks like some kind of military guy, but there's also artwork of him being like a Colonel Sanders type scientist dude, but then in the Pokemon anime, he's kind of like a tie-dye shirt-wearing hippie type character. So there's several different interpretations of Blaine, which is interesting. And here, now if any of you in chat know, do not spoil the secret identity of the 8th mystery gym leader. But no one knows who he is. His face is concealed in shadow. And he has the Earth badge, and when you earn that, all Pokemon will obey you. And when you have all 8 of these badges, you will be able to enter the Indigo Plateau, the headquarters of the Pokemon League, and challenge the 4 most powerful trainers in the game, the Elite Four. So here they're explaining the Pokemon storage system, because you only can store 6 Pokemon at a time, how to arrange items, giving Pokemon unique nicknames. Yes, the 8th gym leader is going to be Meowth. I know, Bill, darn it, Bill, I told you not to spoil. But it's okay. We'll fight Meowth when it's time. But they explain the evolution of Pokemon, their transformation. Here we have a chart of the different types. There are 15 different elemental types at the time, with a bit of a rundown of some of which Pokemon types are effective or not effective against different other types. Now the different elements are normal, which is just being basically a normal animal that might fight by biting or scratching. But they normal type Pokemon can use elemental moves as well. No, normal, fire, water, electric, grass, ice, fighting. Yeah, it's kind of silly, but fighting is an elemental type. But fighting, Pokemon that use sort of martial arts type techniques. Poison types, so Pokemon with stingers and poison, and venom. Ground type, so which is notice that ground is different from rock type. Ground type and rock type are a little different. So flying type, birds, some flying, different winged Pokemon. Psychic type, Pokemon that fight using ESP type moves. Bug type, so lots of insect-like creatures. Rock type, ghost type, and dragon type. Now, in Pokemon in Pokemon Gold and Silver, they added the sequels. They added 2 new types: the Steel type and the Dark type. And then another Pokemon type was not added until the 6th games of the series, Pokemon X and Pokemon Y on Nintendo 3DS. They added the new Fairy type. Now, there are Pokemon in this game that are electric type. That there's some Pokemon that gain those, I think Magnemite is an example of a Pokemon that's electric type here, but it becomes electric and steel type in Pokemon Gold and Silver. There's several Pokemon like Jigglypuff and Clefairy that years down the line would gain the Fairy type. Now, Bill Preston in chat is hardcore. They say that they memorize this elemental typing advantage and disadvantage chart as soon as possible. And here they have a explanation of how to use the menu system, how to use the Game Link functionality, and a sort of listing of all the different items. Some of the different Pokemon moves, different types of items like the different Pokeballs, mystery items. Now these are items that either evolve your Pokemon instantaneously, or now we have the Helix Fossil, the Dome Fossil, and the Old Amber. It just says you will need to find the secret of this item. These are fossils that can be restored by a special machine into fossils of ancient extinct Pokemon species. Now we have different healing and recovery items and a deliberately incomplete listing of your different Pokemon. Alright. And that's the manual. And here we've got the Pokemon Player's Guide. This is an incomplete version. This is not the final manual, that final cover for the Player's Guide. But, yep, so that's the manual. And I think with that, the time has come to play the actual game. Oh boy, are you excited? I'm excited. Alright, let's get started. We'll play for maybe 5, we'll play for a good 20 minutes. And then I'll take my midstream break. I don't know, I can't say if we'll make it all the way to the first gym badge tonight. But we had a lot more backstory and establishing background material to cover. So here is the game itself. When it decides it wants to actually switch to the right layout, I used the button several minutes, about 20-30 seconds ago at this point, and I'm kind of stalling. Yeah, because my broadcast software is slow for whatever reason. But, come on, please switch over. I know it's going to. I'm not worried about its performance. I just know it's just taking a minute. Alright, so in the meantime, I'm going to be explaining how I'm going to actually play the game. So I'll be playing using the Analog Pocket. You don't need fancy equipment like this to enjoy retro games. But this is a way I like to do it, because I like to play using original cartridges, and not with Game Boy in particular. Game Boy emulation is very well established, but so here we have the menu for it. I've got my copy of Pokémon Red already in the device, and I'm playing this using the SN30 Pro 8-bit DOE controller, and let's get started. Alright. There we go. Oh my gosh. This is so intensely nostalgic. There we go. Now, I know some of my viewers have never even actually seen what the original Pokemon game actually looked like. Now, once again, I want to stress, you do not need fancy equipment like a doggone Analog Pocket to play Pokemon, right? Play the game in a manner that gives you the experience you want to play. Oh, did I look at Pokemon Power? That's going to be down the line. For those just joining me, we watched the promotional videotape that was made out with Nintendo Power, sort of priming the pump for the franchise in general. We looked at the first mention of Pocket Monsters Red and Green in a 1996 issue of Nintendo Power. And I did not have that issue, but reading a blurb like that saying, oh, there's this monster training game in Japan that's becoming popular, and having been familiar with the Pac-Man craze of the 80s, that I was not around for myself, but I read about in some of those earliest books about the history of video games, I was like, oh wow, this is happening again. So I was very interested to see if they try to bring this out in the US, but anyway, so the cool thing about this, you could view it in the literal black and white, but you could also simulate the awful green-tinted screen of the original model Game Boy. Now, this is what the game looked like to me, but I know for some of my viewers, this is not very easy to look at. So, I did play this on an original model Game Boy, but we'll play it like this. And it's kind of funny, as passionate as I am about this series, this game absolutely transformed my life, but, and for those, and now I did do a tease of this game. I did tease, in which, back in, right before, at the dawn of summer, I'm like, oh, I'm going to, back before I, was still doing a lot of cam tubing, and before I revealed that I was going to do a VTuber, introducing a VTuber model, I did, you can check the, hold on, if you want to check, I'm not really keeping up with it right now, but I had a bunch of lore. Well, you can see it in my VODs, and actually, there, and that second link in chat, it's the link to my lore playlist. I'm out of character now, but I did this whole storyline with this AI construct, that was harassing me and trying to make me mine cryptocurrency. And in the stream where I was supposed to be revealing, doing my first stream on Pokémon Red, he warped Human H, me in front of a webcam, to a backrooms-like negative dimension, and he hired Lunarian H, me, my own persona, to take over while he tried to rescue, the actual human me from the other universe. So now we're actually playing Pokemon. Now this music right here, fantastic music, like very academic feel to this music. And we have this Professor Oak on screen. This is a very academic, very intelligent feeling, like, the start to a documentary. Alright, time to break out my voice acting chops, so... Hello there. No, I'm gonna do my old man voice. Hello there, welcome to the world of Pokemon. My name is Oak. People call me the Pokemon Professor. I'm kind of tapping into the English dub performance. This world is inhabited by creatures called Pokemon. Hey there, Juan! Using some of my free follower emotes. We're finally playing Pokemon. This is only the third or fourth time in my entire life that I've actually played through this game, and the last time I played through this was in 2008. So I know this. I played this game non-stop back in the 90s, but it's a very rarely partaken of joy. But Juan is saying, what are the most important franchises for Nintendo going into the new millennium? Yeah, I would say new millennium. I would say definitely Pokemon was probably the single biggest transformative one. Pokemon, Zelda, and I think Pokemon was the biggest transformation in terms of Nintendo's business model and overall strategy. For some people, Pokemon are pets. Others use them for fights. Yeah, don't worry, it's not like dogfighting. These are creatures with superpowers that are ultra robust, and they enjoy beating the mess out of each other with their elemental powers. I promise. I'm sure of it. But myself, I study Pokemon as a profession. Mario was there rewriting how to do 3D platforming. Oh, absolutely. I'd say the release of Mario's, like, theoretically, Mario 64, like Super Mario 3D Land for Nintendo 3DS, is what Mario 64 logically should have been, so to speak. Whereas Mario 64 was kind of at least 2 or 3 years ahead of its time compared to what other platformers were doing in terms of having a free-roaming sandbox gameplay concept. I study Pokemon as a profession. First, what is your name? Now, okay, it's now canonically established within the lore of the Pokemon games that this kid is named Red. But, at the time, and including in lots of official screenshots and media, everyone named this kid Ash, or their own name. So, I'm not going with Ash, though. I want to personalize the gameplay a little bit. We're going to go with H. A name I'm slightly biased towards. Right, so your name is H. Or Jack for that 1%. This is my grandson. He's been your rival since you were a baby. What is his name again? Now, I named him Gary because that's what the equivalent of this character is named in the anime. Yeah, Speedrun Strats, one letter name. Not for the rival, though. Now, of course, because of the anime character, everyone would name him Gary. But for me, I liked to actually use the proper upper and lowercase. And I do that for Pokemon too. Yeah, there's also, Blue. Yeah, in his, like, canonical final, name. Now, apparently in the Japanese version of this game, the original version, they're default names, but they are default names that get overwritten when you start a new file, so the player never actually sees them. So the default names are like Sony and Sega or something like that in Red and Green, I believe. But they're like... It's the sort of thing you'd only know if you knew the game on a programming level, I believe. And it's kind of fascinating what a different context in terms of the game industry this game released in 96, where Nintendo 64 is not on the market yet. The most up-to-date Nintendo console on the market in terms of home systems would have been the Super NES or Super Famicom, whereas in North America, Nintendo 64 has already been on the market for a couple of years. So very different kind of world these games launched in their Western and Japanese launches respectively. That's right, I remember now. His name is Gary. Yeah, the ironic thing is there's a Pokemon game on the Sega Pico. The Sega Pico was kind of an edutainment toy, a sort of fusion between interactive books and video games. And whereas in North America, Sega Pico did not last very long. Meanwhile, I understand in Japan and in Central and South America, the Sega Pico actually was kind of a long-lived edutainment toy. And it ended up having Pokemon games released for it. Your very own Pokemon legend is about to unfold. Now this here, when you have this large, detailed sprite reflecting the Ken Sugimori artwork, and it shrinks down into the actual game sprite. A world of adventures with Pokemon awaits. Let's go! That was such a cool transition to me as a kid. Now, here we go. Here it is. So, H is playing the SNES. Okay, it's time to go. Now, mind you, people, as I understand, in Europe, it was very common to say SNES to describe the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. In Japan, it was very simple. It was called the Super Famicom. But in North America, a lot of the official styling of, no one called it SNES no one I knew called it the SNES. None of the commercials in North America called it SNES. In North America, the official styling was Super NES and sometimes SNES. What's H playing on the Super NES? Well, definitely nothing, because I did not own a Super NES in real life at this point. We will see some references to some Super NES games later on in the game when we get to Sell It on City, including a reference to a Game Freak developed game called Mario and Wario that never released in North America. So it's like, oh, it's a game with Mario with a bucket on his head, and we're like, kind of like, oh, it's some weird fictional game they made up with. We didn't know at the time that was an actual game Game Freak made that has some music in common with this game right here. So H turned on the PC. We are going to withdraw our free potion. Withdraw potion. What do you want to withdraw? Nothing. We have, we're going to go ahead and save. Would you like to save the game? Yes, we're going to save over our existing file. The older file will be erased to save. Okay? Yes. Yeah, I used my analog pocket to save over, or to save a capture of the playthrough we were doing before. Yeah, the TV depicted as just being on the ground here. The classic video game houses. We have the upstairs, which has my room and my bed and a potted plant. And downstairs, which just has... we don't even have a kitchen. In Pokemon Gold and Silver, there's at least a little kitchenette thing. You have a bookshelf crammed full of Pokemon books. You have a TV. Now, Bill Preston is saying, you ever think about how many memories you overwrote when you started a new game as a kid? Never. I never overwrote my own game on purpose as a kid. My pastor's son, who I let play my game for a few minutes, unfortunately I did not have one of those, like, oh, Pokemon is from Satan kind of churches that my family went to. Now, my church growing up did stage a protest and picketed the outside of a local bookstore that for selling selling spiritualist books that included non-Christian books. Meanwhile, my parents, it's kind of funny. We drove past there, and my mom covered my eyes, and they're like, "Don't look at them. Those are fools that fear any truth other than their own." But I didn't know until years later that the reason she covered my eyes was that's the church we attended at the time, and they were picketing them for cover. Like, my parents had the Bible, they also had the Quran, They also had the Kabbalah. They also had the I Ching, the Chinese classic of changes. And they also had the Book of Runes, the book of Norwegian runic divination. My parents were very open-minded. We did have a basic Christian background, but we had books that explored traditions and understandings of the universe from many different backgrounds and cultures. So there's a movie on TV. 4 boys are walking on railroad tracks. I better go too. Oh wow! It's written in first person there. So let's talk to Mom. Hey, Mom. Hey, Mom. Yeah, Azrest, I'm not kidding. But yeah, my parents did a pretty good job exposing me to lots of different cultures and backgrounds and understandings, different traditions. Right. All boys have to leave home someday. It said so on TV. Professor Oak next door is looking for you. What kind of this writing, this simple writing. Yeah, Bluetooth is a rune. You know, so... Right. All boys leave home someday. It said so on TV. I'm glad you happened to see the television show that said that, Mom, or else you wouldn't let me run off on my own to tame magical creatures with superpowers without adult supervision. I'm raising Pokemon too. When they get strong, they can protect me. Aww. Now, there were rumors as a kid of some secret way to sneak out and past this barrier into this grass. We have some water we can't explore yet. But, ignore that, that cue. The next stream is going to be on Saturday. Not this coming Saturday, next week. Now, there's always a person of a broad gauge build, let's say, near the first opening area of all Pokemon games that says something to the effect of technology is amazing or technology is incredible and says something about a certain game feature contextualized in the universe through technology. Technology is incredible. You can now store and recall items and Pokemon as data via PC. So let's read the sign here. Oak Pokemon Research Lab. Now, I just want to briefly emphasize, I did play this originally on my original model Game Boy, which would have looked a lot more like this. But for the sake of everyone's eyes, even though it's nostalgic for me, for the sake of everyone being able to see the game properly, we'll play using a style more... So here we got Gary's house. Man, so... Hi, H. Gary is out at Grandpa's lab. Crammed full of Pokemon books. We have the book on the table. It's a big map. This is useful. A town map. And here we have a map of... This is the map of the game world. Based on the greater Tokyo area. At this point, we were not aware in the West that these different Pokemon regions were based on different parts of Japan until Pokemon Black and White... for the mainline series started featuring regions. Now, this is not in the strict order in which we encounter these areas in the game. But how long we're gonna see Baby Egg? How long? I'm not sure what you meant by that. Are you talking about an ad you saw, Juan? Sorry, I'm a little lacking for context there. But, and, okay, she was raising Pokemon. So this sign here, Pallet Town. Shades of your journey await. So this is Pallet Town, and throughout this region, the Kanto region, yeah, we're not going to meet Togepi until Gen 2, so it's going to be a while. But, yeah, so this is me playing Pokemon in the backseat of my parents' car. You know, it was me and Mom, and then we had to go to the DMV. And she let me, we were waiting, so fortunately the DMV in my local area, it was a good, 20-minute drive to the DMV from this toy store where we picked up our copy of Pokemon, so I got to read the manual, read the basics, and how to play, started playing, and we went to the DMV. Mom got me a couple of slices of pizza from the pizzeria that was in the same strip mall as the DMV, and I got to sit in the car and play Pokemon while Mom was in there waiting in the long, boring line at the DMV. So, oh, actually, we didn't go into the lab yet. Let's see the lab, because I believe there's some unique dialogue here. Oh, I am interested. So, Reliet is saying that Yu-Gi-Oh! The Early Days Collection is coming out for Switch. While to get into the origins of the early days of this other creature monster franchise, so it's a compilation of the Game Boy Color era games with a few GBA games thrown in, including Japanese-only ones that are translated. That's very interesting. Now, all IR event cards from the Japanese-only events are retained. That's really cool. Now, I played Yu-Gi-Oh! Dark Duel Stories. Yu-Gi-Oh! Dark Duel Stories was the first Yu-Gi-Oh! Game to release on Game Boy Color in North America, one of the earliest games of the series. It was very disappointing how poor the presentation and the interface were for Game Boy Color when Pokemon Trading Card Game had come out years earlier and had much better graphics, much better art for the cards, and, So I study Pokemon as Professor Oak's aide. So this person here, Professor Oak is the authority on Pokemon. Many Pokemon trainers hold him in high regard. Let's see what this nerd over here says. I study Pokemon as Professor Oak's aide. I think we meet who's supposed to be this guy or several others throughout the adventure. Got 3 Pokeballs on the desk here. So Reliet in chat is updating us. Games included, more to be revealed. Oh, that's interesting. Duel Monsters 2, Dark Duel Stories. I'm very disappointed that the Game Boy Capsule Monsters game is not included in that. I think it was Capsule Monsters Chess. That was, I think, a rather critical early 8-bit Yu-Gi-Oh! Game. Hopefully that gets revealed. Hey, Gramps isn't around. Should I do the Gary Oak voice? There's an email message here. Calling all Pokemon trainers. The elite trainers of Pokemon League are ready to take on all comers. Bring your best Pokemon and see how you rate as a trainer. They're Pokemon League HQ, Indigo Plateau. P.S. Professor Oak, please visit us. It says they're ready to take on all trainers. No, they're only ready to take on trainers with 8 badges that could survive the gauntlet of highly skilled trainers in the Victory Road Cave. There's an email message here. Okay, this is the same content from before. Alright. You have to button mash through all this. It's encyclopedia-like, but the pages are blank. Push start to open the menu. The save option is on the menu screen. Yeah, so really it's saying Capsule Monsters might be confirmed, but no Dungeon Dice Monsters. Fortunately, I do have Dungeon Dice Monsters for Game Boy Advance, and I do enjoy Dungeon Dice Monsters, and even though sadly the opponent AI really stinks on that game, but Dungeon Dice Monsters, the music in that game sounds like it's coming straight off of the Game Gear or Sega Mark III sound chip, and I found that incredibly nostalgic. Now, Reliot's saying they might be splitting this into 2 collections like we did for the Mega Man collection. Okay, that would make sense. Alright. I would love to see a modern Dungeon Dice Monsters game. That would be fantastic. If I could ask for any, and as a very ultra-casual Yu-Gi-Oh! Fan, if I could ask for any new Yu-Gi-Oh! Game, I would ask for a modern presentation, full-blooded remake of Pokemon, of Dungeon Dice Monsters. Now, Reliot's saying they're surprised they didn't pick up Mario Party Jamboree. Well, frankly, I've waited years and years to play Pokemon Red. Now's the time. And plus, Nintendo should be happy because I went and bought myself a doggone Alarmo. And honestly, the fact that I wanted Mario Party Jamboree looks like fun, but I'd rather play Pokemon. I'm not going to buy a game just to support it on principle, but I'm not going to play it anytime soon. Whereas I was actually interested in higher-end sort of bedside sleep experience devices, which at $100, Alarmo is actually on the low end of. Yes, I did get an Alarmo, Reliet. And honestly, if you just want an alarm clock, the app on your phone is fine. You do not need an Alarma. Now, I enjoy my clock, but I'm a bit of a horology buff, and I wanted to pick up my, I wanted to get a more sophisticated alarm clock. Because I enjoy my wristwatches. I'm not a big collector, but I enjoy the history behind the development of wristwatches. And, plus, Reliat in chat's messing with me saying, unfollowed, unsubscribed, because I bought the Nintendo Sound Clock Alarmo. And plus, I was fascinated in the Nintendo Quality of Life project back when Satoru Iwata was talking about it before his passing. I really thought that project had died with him, sadly, and that the vision for it had sort of faded. But now that I know that that project eventually ended up resulting in Alarmo, I was very interested in it from that aspect as well. Azurez is saying canceled. Hey, I'd rather get canceled for buying an Alarmo than for being involved in some kind of crazy and illegal scheme like defrauding a charity, which is typically what people get canceled for. So, Professor Oak stops me. Wild Pokemon live in tall grass. You need your own Pokemon for your protection. I know. Here, come with me. Now, the game's automatically walking. Gramps, I'm fed up with waiting. Gary, oh, let me think. Oh, that's right. I told you to come. Just wait. Here, H. There are 3 Pokemon here. Aha! They are inside the Pokeballs. When I was young, I was a serious Pokemon trainer. In my old age, I only have 3 left, but you could have one. Choose. Hey, Gramps, what about me? Be patient, Gary. You can have one, too. So, Charmander obviously prefers hot places. When it rains, steam is said to spout from the tip of its tail. Now, in the anime lore, it's very firmly established, and some of the very few rare references of Pokemon suffering risk of death, it's established that if a Charmander's tail flame is extinguished by rain or water, it will actually die. So, do you want the fire Pokemon Charmander? We are choosing Charmander, spoilers, but we're going to look at the other options first. That's a fire type. Squirtle. After birth, its back swells and hardens into a shell. Powerfully sprays foam from its mouth. Yeah, Relia saying in chat is saying that Charmander's eyes look like they're solid black with a white scale. Yeah, the graphics are very limited. And Relia it's saying they always prefer the more reptilian-esque look for them. Yeah, at this point, especially in the game sprites, a lot of Pokemon have a more sort of animalistic appearance, whereas later on they tend to be a little more anthropomorphized in a sense. Do I want the water Pokemon Squirtle? No, we do not. And the third is Bulbasaur, number 1, Pokedex number 1. The Donald Triplet of Pokemon. Case number 1 here. If you know who Donald Triplet is. Yeah, the Pokemon weren't designed with anime sensibilities in mind. Now, the interesting thing about the Pokemon designs, not here, not in the game I'm playing, because these have updated sprites, but the Pokemon were designed originally as these 8-bit Game Boy sprites. Then Ken Sugimori made the sprites. I forgot if Ken actually designed the sprites and the artwork, but either way, the sprites were done first to design what the creatures would look like. And then Ken Sugimori did the watercolor artwork of the creatures based on the sprites. Then they went back and adapted the Ken Sugimori artwork into designs that would be easier or make more sense to animate. Because it's one thing to design something as a static 8-bit pixel sprite. It's another thing to design it as a static watercolor painting. It's another thing entirely to design something that's designed to move and make sense in 3 dimensions as it moves around. Now, Aureliad is clarifying, Ken Sugimori drew the final artwork, but he wasn't the one who conceptualized the designs. Okay. The plant sprouts and grows with this Pokemon. Do I want... Now, Squirtle or Bulbasaur are recommended because they are very effective grass and water type against the first couple of gym leaders, but Charmander was the one I disliked the least. And I knew it would become Charizard, who you see up there, as I point with my snout up at the box art of the game. I knew it would become Charizard. And it's like, yeah, flying around on a big dragon was cool. Now, of course, at the time, I sort of imagined Charizard as being like a Titanic, like, monster movie kaiju type creature, and not something that could very easily fit inside a normal house. But in the early merchandise in Japan, Clefairy was kind of used as a mascot. And Pikachu very quickly supplanted it. We'll take our Charmander. Nice little, very, very satisfying little fanfare there. Do you want to give a nickname to Charmander? You know what I think happened? What happened with me was I didn't want it to be in all caps, so I named the Charmander in all caps, and then, so when it evolved, it was now a Charmeleon, but its nickname was still Charmander. So for that purpose, I'm gonna leave its name just as Charmander. Oh, darn it. I think... Okay, yeah, that just leaves it as the default name. Yes, the episode, the chapter book for children, yeah. Oh no, excuse me, I missed something in chat. Right, saying they imagined Charizard as a building-sized kaiju because their first exposure to it was the Island of Giant Pokemon novelization. Oh, so, those ones where they make a book using screenshots from the television show. And just put captions over it and turn that into a kid's book. I remember I had some Thomas the Tank Engine books in the very early 90s that were just screenshots from the show that they put captions over to make like children's books that were adaptations of the episodes. Now, I chose the fire type, so of course Gary freaking Oak is gonna choose the one that's the water type, which is effective against me. At the height of so-called Pokemon. I meant to say in the height of so-called Pokemania. Hey, let's check out our Pokemon. Now listen to this fantastic composition here with the music here. Sort of like, like surfer dude kind of music, I imagine, that archetype. But very music that reflects his sort of cocky, stuck-up, adversarial attitude. Let's check out our Pokemon. Come on, I'll take you on. Oh, okay, time for our first battle. And we've got the battle music. Now, this is the ordinary battle music for fighting another trainer. Now, Gary sends out his squirrel. And so this is how the battle takes place between Pokemon. Now, a lot of the back sprites of the Pokemon that you're battling with, like Charmander's not so bad. Some of these back sprites are barely recognizable. Now, I never played Pokemon, I never played Pocket Monsters like Red and Green. But from what I understand, the placement of the PKMN, short for the Pokemon option, and the item option are actually switched in Japan. For whatever reason, they decided in the localization to switch them. But we have our potion. So I was very new to RPGs. I had already played Final Fantasy VII by this point and was barely competent enough to get out of Midgar. But, so the idea of turn-based RPGs was very new to me. The idea of strategic moves that did not deal damage, using a move like Growl to force the enemy's attack to drop, and then Squirtle used Tail Whip to force Charmander's defense status to fall. Now, due to a lot of glitches and malfunctions and oddities of the programming that players were not aware of at the time, a certain number of these attacks and some of the items do not actually work as they're intended to. And sometimes people will use that retroactively to say, oh, Pokemon Gen 1 was terrible, it was full of glitches. But they were not glitches that impacted our quality of gameplay experience. They are not things that were really discovered or widely discussed until more than a decade after the fact of this game's US release, when a lot of hobbyists were going in and analyzing this game on the programming level and realized some of these attacks, some of these items were not working as the programmers intended. Now, Game Freak was a very small team at this point, and as I understand it, Pokémon Green, Red and Green, the original Japanese release, actually had far more glitches and far more easily executable glitches that could be used to break the game and skip large portions of it, or to force the game to malfunction to the point of crashing. Yeah, so I am just... Something about Squirtle's sprite, his little smile, is very appealing in this sprite. It's not really in line with how his face would be drawn in general. And notice I did happen to use the gendered pronoun his. In official stylings, in official style guides, Pokemon, with very few exceptions, always receive the gender-neutral object pronoun of it. But, and Pokemon, even though there's a male and female Nidoran species, they're distinguished as separate Pokedex numbers, separate species entirely. But it is the case that regular Pokemon do not have genders. They would receive a male, female, or be genderless, starting in the second generation, the sequels. So we'll go ahead and use Scratch and knock out Gary Squirtle. Gain 70 experience points and go straight to level 6 in our very first battle. H defeated Gary. Gary, what? Unbelievable! I picked the wrong Pokemon! Got 175 Poke-Yen for, Okay, I'll make my Pokemon fight to toughen it up. Hey, Gramps, smell you later. Dun, 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 dun. Alright, let's talk to, the lone Pokemon here forever. That's Professor Oak's last Pokemon. Forever unobtainable. Oak, raise your young Pokemon by making it fight. Remember? Yeah, so we have cockfighting. We've been playing for 33 minutes according to this timer already. And here on our ID card we have the profile pictures of the 8 leaders, the 8 gym leaders, and the mysterious anonymous 8th leader, who Bill in chat spoiled as being Bill. I mean, not Bill, as being Bill's someone else entirely. Bill in the game, as spoiled as being Meowth. But hey, how about this? In 2 minutes, they're going to force an ad break on everyone. I'd rather disable ads entirely and make it such as that no one had to put up with ads, because I'd probably get a total of $10 in the course of a whole year off these dumb ads. I don't think people should have to subscribe to me just to have an ad-free viewing experience. But I do appreciate those who do support me financially. I do not do this for the money. I'd rather disable ads and not make a dime than have people have to pay to have ad-free viewing for me. But in a couple minutes it's going to come up. It's time for me to stretch, refill my water bottle, and for that reason, I think it's a good moment for me to take my midstream break of, let's say 8 minutes, and we'll get back and play at least through... we're not getting all the way to Brock. We're gonna complete at least... Actually, no, probably a shorter break of just a few minutes. and get through preparing to leave leave Viridian City to go north is where we'll leave off at, I think, today. So I'll be back in a couple minutes, and so that everyone else has a chance to get up, pop some popcorn if you want, and do whatever else you need to do while I get up and stretch. So I'll be back soon. Oops, I forgot to add music. I can't leave you guys without music. Okay. Hold on. I gotta add this. Okay, I'm gonna start the countdown as soon as... It's gonna take a minute before my Pokemon music playlist actually shows up. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start the timer. I'll be back soon. Sorry, everybody. I forgot to unmute my microphone. Hi, everybody. Yeah, and Bill saying, welcome back, Super Mute Station H. I forgot to, you know what? I probably had my microphone on while I was away from my desk, so you might have heard, like, sounds of me, like, leaving the room over the break. I'm glad I was able to get the music running, but I believe we can talk to Mom here and have them restore our Pokemon. Yeah, there we go. What kind of overlay did I use for this? Now, this is just... I genuinely just Google searched I just Google searched a frame from Google. There's just a scan of a Game Boy, and I just overlaid it on top of my the output from my screen. Now at the time it would have looked like this, because this is the model Game Boy I played it on, but for the sake of everyone's eyes, even though if everyone could see this nonsense fine, I would play through the entire freaking game like this, you know I would. But this is much more friendly to everyone's eyes. Yeah, no, because what Reliator is referring to, there are a lot of emulators out there where you have the option to overlay different systems' frames on it for more accurate looks for different handheld games. But here, now we do not have Pokeballs yet. It's time for us to adventure north. Yeah, before the music even started. Yeah, Relia's saying it doesn't bother them, but they understand not everyone has the same photosensitivity. Yeah, I know I've had at least a couple of viewers like admit like, hey, I can barely see anything. So if I know they're among my viewers, I will switch over to these some more literal, more like in terms of what the Game Boy is putting out. This is what the game truly would look like, but because of that unique type of screen used on the early original model Game Boys, like what I played it on, it would have looked a lot more like this. So we've got a Rattata, a little mouse-looking critter. Yeah, let's just beat the mess out of it. I believe, due to the way the game generates Pokemon encounters, I believe level 2 is the lowest that a Pokemon can naturally appear at in this game. You cannot encounter a level 1 Pokemon in any way, shape, or form unless you use glitches or Game Shark codes. Yeah, if you see level 1, it is something that is actually not normally meant to be witnessed within the context of the game. Yeah, so to me, wanting to explore the world, these random Pokemon encounters when walking through tall grass was quite the odious distraction. Now Kalakaboy in chat is saying Happy Friday. Now Reliat900 is saying if Ilka developed the Gen 5 remakes, would I stream it? We'll see if I have any kind of future whatsoever with the Pokemon franchise, because I know the patent lawsuit by Nintendo against Pocket Pair has given me very poor brand recognition for Pokemon as an IP. If it had been, and it's not like, oh, I'm not a fan of Palworld. If it had been a copyright lawsuit over the design of the creatures, or a trademark lawsuit, because I believe Nintendo or Game Freak or someone with a finger in that pie has actual trademarks, which are separate from copyrights for each Pokemon design. If it was a trademark or copyright lawsuit over some of the Pokemon character designs, I know some hardcore fans of Palworld who openly admit some of these designs are too similar even for it to be a parody or inspiration. They really do need to dial back some of these design similarities to actual Pokemon. However, the fact that they decided to go with a patent lawsuit and the context of the apparent patents they may be using has me hoping that Nintendo loses. So if Nintendo wins that lawsuit, I'm probably permanently divorcing myself from future Pokemon releases, at least in terms of buying them brand new. Maybe I'll buy them pre-owned. Now, that's completely coincidental to the fact that the quality of the Pokemon releases, the ambition and quality control have been very spotty at best, and I was already very disenfranchised with the Pokemon franchise, ironically enough, based on that alone. So, yeah. Now, really saying the most fun they had with Palworld was the crafting and the exploration. The monsters they solely used for working the fields and machines. Yeah, the only friend I have who's big into Palworld is, like, even they admit that some of the Pokemon designs are close enough to be within reasonable grounds for a lawsuit. And they basically use it as an exploration game. They don't even get involved with the gunplay aspects of it. No, so they don't see Palworld being a total replacement for Pokemon, so they play it for fun, like there's some bourgeoisie industrial magnate running a sweatshop. Twirls evil mustache. Reliat, if you keep acting like a bourgeoisie industrial sweatshop manager, they're going to rise up against you and form the Democratic Creatures Republic and overthrow you. Yes, I'm clever. I came up with that on the fly. Now, Reliat's saying it takes a while to get the resources to craft guns anyway. I honestly feel, most of the people I'm aware of do not get much into the gunplay aspect of it. I really think the gunplay aspect of it was kind of just for the shock factor and of drawing attention to the game. Alright, okay. Okay, so you don't directly control... Like, most of the Palworld gameplay I've seen is my friend doing some, I guess, base tour videos of their little settlement. Now, we're not saying they could be ridden, but battle-wise, they're more or less act as AI-controlled bodyguards. Okay, that's interesting. You know what? I really wish if the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games had more traditional RPG gameplay. Not necessarily straight up gameplay like the main Pokemon games. We're gonna level up one more time. We're gonna level up once more and then move on to the next town. And really it's saying you fight humans more directly than you fight the creatures. That's interesting. Hey! We got another level up. So let's go down. We're gonna go down. And listen to this music here. This very... Oh no, we left the town, ironically. Okay, there we go. Yeah, this very, you know, childhood nursery rhyme kind of music. It makes me think of, like, that song Polly Wolly Doodle All Day is what I always thought of with this, but it's a distinct melody. They only put 30 hours into Pal World? Well, I'll tell you what, Reliet, you put more time into Pal World than I ever will. Yeah, honestly, like, the nature of the patent lawsuit against a Pocket Pair is of such a nature that I can't believe I'm saying this. Nintendo had more, in terms of the spirit of what an ideal world, what patents are supposed to do, and what patents are supposed to protect in terms of innovation and protecting, you know, creativity and being able to benefit from your innovations for a limited period of time. Nintendo had more reasonable grounds to have patented the jumping physics system from Super Mario Bros. Than they have to patent the concept of sending creatures into battle decades after Pokemon actually hit the market. I mean, and if Nintendo had patented the Super Mario Bros. Jumping mechanics, because those were Super Mario Bros. Was the first game to have those dynamic, mid-air adjustable jumping physics. But I'm glad they didn't, because that allowed, if Nintendo had patented those mechanics, it would have set back platform and game design in general back, I'd say easily by a decade, which would have lasted nearly into the N64 era, which it's scary to think about. But Nintendo had more reasonable grounds to patent the Now let's read this sign. Route 1, Pallet Town to Viridian City. Now because of this guy's hair, I always interpreted this NPC design as being like a medieval, like, knight squire kind of guy, with that bowl cut and the little part in his hair, at least in terms of how I interpret the sprite. Hi, I work at a Pokemon Mart. It's a convenient shop, so please visit us in Viridian City. I know, I'll give you a sample. Here you go. Man, I used to work at retail stores. Imagine if I just went around giving people random, as an individual, not acting on behalf of a particular company that they signed it. Imagine just randomly giving people promotional, just random merchandise the store sells. So video gamey. Now at this point we cannot catch Pokemon because we do not have Pokeballs. Here, kids, spray this on your Pokemon. Now, just trust me. Now, here's the funny thing. So, Bill, at this point, there is no graphical in-game representation of what these items are supposed to look like. So, the Pokemon trading card game trainer cards for Potions, Super Potions, are the first ever representation of what these items are supposed to look like. And later starting with the third generation of Pokemon games on Game Boy Advance, we actually get graphical representations of what a potion looks like. And there's a new Digimon Adventure movie, Digimon Adventure Beyond. Ty and Matt are in their 30s. Wow. Was the trading card game before the anime? I bet Reliet would know that. Was the trading card game released before the anime? I'm curious. By several months, okay. So they might have been developed coinciding with each other. Yeah, so the idea that a potion was a spray that you sprayed on the Pokemon was not necessarily established at this point. See those ledges along the road? It's a bit scary, but you could jump from them. You can get back to Pallet Town quicker that way. Okay. Now, the original iteration of the Pokemon trading card game, which does, pass down to this very day, it's very fascinating to me the way in which, how do I put this? The way the Pokemon trading card game very literally translates the Pokemon battle system as it exists in this very game that we're playing is a real triumph of card game design. Because it makes it so you can have many Pokemon, but as far as the action that takes place, it's not likely that that more than 6 of your Pokemon will actually appear on the field in terms of your active Pokemon or your 5 bench Pokemon. So Reliant saying modern Pokemon TGCR will actually take freelance artists from Twitter and Pixiv and reference their accounts beneath the... okay, that's cool. And Reliant's asking, am I going to register for the Pokemon DGC Pocket Beta? Okay, I was wondering. I wasn't looking closely. So, is that new Pokemon trading card digital game on mobile that they teased during Pokemon Days, Pokemon Presents last year in February, nearly a year ago now? And Bill Preston is saying the first mention of a Pokemon in the anime was in the Squirtle Squad episode, but I started watching the show after that. So, I wasn't until they rewound to the first episode and reran through those episodes again in the early morning slot before it went to Saturday mornings that I got to actually see that episode that mentions the potions. When it comes out properly, I'll go ahead and maybe download it. I know one thing's for sure, I'm not spending any money on it. I'll take my 3 packs a day, and that's more than enough for me. Yeah, I'm not interested in spending a lot of money on Pokemon. I have dozens of booster packs of the actual trading card game. Now it's funny, the way I interpreted these graphics at the time, I did not perceive this as... The idea is that area above that line is a ledge, and I'm jumping down to the sort of terraced spot below, and I'm jumping down again. To me, these just kind of graphically look like weird one-way barriers, and I didn't perceive any sense of depth from them. Now, Reliant is saying the first episode was the Farfetch'd episode. They assume the trainer of the week for that episode was the protagonist. That's a cute misunderstanding. Well, my either first or second episode was the Ghost of Maiden's Peak, and because of that, between Meowth and the Ghastly, I was like, wait, so can Pokemon speak English, or can they only speak their names? I'm kind of confused. Yeah, it looked like a long, spiral pasta. Now here we are in our first large town of the game, our first proper city, Trainer Tips. The battle moves of Pokemon are limited by their power points, PP. To replenish their PP, rest your tired Pokemon at a Pokemon Center, though it is also possible to replenish your Pokemon's PP if you give them a lot of water to drink. I'm silly. So anyway, so we're in our first major city. Those are Pokeballs at your waist. You have Pokemon. It's great that you can carry and use Pokemon anytime, anywhere. Now, Reliant's saying that the Ghost of Maiden's Peak was packaged on VHS with the Pokemon Tower episodes. They wanted to see the episodes. They wanted to see how they handled the idea of Ash and Company visiting a mausoleum. Yeah, I saw the Pokemon Tower episodes before I started actually playing the game. So it's interesting how they decided to approach Viridian City, and it's also interesting that they decided to make a reference to the concept of warp tiles in the Silphco building with Jesse and James from Team Rocket pushing Ash onto one. Yet they decided not to incorporate the concept of the Team Rocket raid on the Sylph building into the anime plot. You want to know about the two kinds of caterpillar Pokemon? Yes, there are many more now, but Caterpie has no poison, but Weedle does. Watch out for its poison sting. Excuse me, did I mean Saffron City? Yeah, I'm confusing. Yeah, the fact that there's... Yeah, I confused the fact that they go to Lavender Town to Pokemon Tower. No, Ash does, because Ash is by himself at this point, temporarily. He goes to Lavender Tower to get a ghost Pokemon to bring back to Saffron City to face Sabrina. That's why I confused the two. So here, a Pokemon Center here is a little hospital for Pokemon. Pokemon Centers heal your tired or hurt or fainted Pokemon. Now, this music here was taken from the, I believe, 1989 or 1990 game, actually, it would have had to be 1990 or 1991, because it featured Yoshi, and Yoshi first appeared in 90 or 91 in Super Mario World. Yeah, Brock and Misty were trapped in Sabrina's dollhouse when she was having her split personality episode. Oh, you can use that PC in the corner. The receptionist told me. So kind. Yeah, here's the PC back when it was a purely text-based interface. We have someone's PC, H's PC, and log off. So H's PC is the item storage system. Someone's PC is the Pokemon storage system. We don't have any other Pokemon, so there's nothing we can do right now. This is where you go to activate your Game Link features when you have a link cable hooked up. Yeah, and then Ash and Pikachu got forcibly astrally projected. Isn't astral projection when your body is in one place but your consciousness is elsewhere? I've got my supernatural ESP type terminology. I don't remember if that's correct, but I'll take it. But really, it's saying the Electric Tail of Pikachu manga. I've never actually read that manga. Featured a gigantic haunter that was terrorizing Saffron City. Ash asked the president of Silphco to build a giant Pokeball to catch it, ironically predicting Dynamaxing by about 20 years. Yeah, I heard that that manga has a lot of maybe some saucier and more violent references. There's a Pokemon Center in every town ahead. They don't charge money either. Welcome to our Pokemon Center. We heal your Pokemon. Oh yeah, but anyway, the music for this Pokemon Center theme was taken from the game Mario and Yoshi, also known as Yoshi for Game Boy, the puzzle game. Yeah, the manga was very more mature. I understand there was a certain reference to someone doing something in a bathtub with a tentacle. Yeah. Yeah, and that's the stuff that made it into the manga, and and they didn't try to write around or actually edit the artwork. Ash had Brock's personality. Oh, okay, so yeah, very kind of like Yugi in the original Yu-Gi-Oh anime, Yu-Gi-Oh manga. I understand he was fond of certain magazines that someone of his age perhaps should not be reading. Yeah, it was a different country and a different age. You know, it's kind of funny that they removed Brock from the anime for a while, not because apparently of his excessive fondness for young women, but due to his skin color. Because I believe the perception in Japan was that Brock was maybe of, Okinawan descent, and maybe had slightly darker skin than many mainland Japanese bloodlines. Whereas in the United States, the perception was more that he might have been black or of African-American descent. And Relight saying their mom hated Brock because he never opens his eyes. Yeah, but The shopkeeper's shouting me down. Hey, you came from Pallet Town? You know Professor Oak, right? His order came in. Will you take it to him? H got Oak's parcel. Okay, say hi to Professor Oak for me. Yeah, we're actually gonna have to go back to Pallet Town. This shop sells many antidotes. On the shelf, wow, tons of Pokemon stuff. No, potions are all sold out. Oh yeah, that's right. Well, we can't buy potions in this first town. I'm glad I remembered that. And now this is my first time playing this game in high definition like this, and it's amazing seeing how detailed the items on the shelves are. Of course, to actually buy things, we talk to the shopkeeper. But as I was saying, he was stoned. Well, the ironic thing was, Azurest, Brock is actually the rock-type specialist gym leader. So the idea that Brock is stoned is kind of ironic, but, And Relia was saying mainly because Brock could cook, and that was the Italian stereotype. Okay, yeah, I guess, maybe even just depending on who you're hanging out with, the perception of actually we're gonna do some more. We have to do a little more exploring. There's a very important exploratory element. We want to check out some of the things. We checked out the store here. There's the edge of town here. Let's go into this house. Whew, I'm trying to memorize all my notes. Let's see, can we read the notes? Looked at the notebook. First page. Pokeballs are used to catch Pokemon. Up to 6 Pokemon can be carried. People who raise Pokemon and make Pokemon fight are called Pokemon trainers. Turn the page, yes. Second page. A healthy Pokemon may be hard to catch, so weaken it first. Poison, burns, and other damage are effective. Turn the page. Nah, this is all basic stuff we know. So let's look at the chalkboard. The blackboard describes Pokemon status changes during battles. There's a SLP for sleep, BRN for burn. Burn and freeze I did not very rarely encountered. More likely will see poison and paralyze. Okay, be sure to read the blackboard carefully. Now, this is we'll see this again and again throughout the series, but this is a Pokemon school to train, trainers. And Reliant in chat saying, mainly because Brock could cook, that was telling you could go east and get an optional battle with Gary or the rival. Now, yeah, and Reliant's getting at something I was going to mention when we go a little further north. Now, I actually did, by coincidence of not thinking to go west at that point, I didn't actually encounter that battle. I didn't learn about it till I read the player's guide. So can I get that optional rival battle if I go that way after I go down, do the Oaks Parcel quest and get my Pokedex? Relia, do you remember that? Because I don't remember if that's the case or not. Meanwhile, while we wait and see if in this building here, got this little kid that says, "My daddy loves Pokemon too." Oh, and here I have a sign on the wall. Spiro, named Speary. Okay, so anytime before the first gem, so we have this man here. Coming up with nicknames is fun, but hard. Simple names are easiest to remember. Speary. Tweet. You can't get to the next scripted rival battle after. Okay. So we'll do it. You can't go through here. This is private property. Now, even at the time, it struck me just based on the way the characters move. They normally look up, left, down, or right. The fact that the character is in the position, such as that of facing forward, but facing sideways, just stuck out as like, okay, it's supposed to be laying there. Let's talk to this woman here. Oh, Grandpa, don't be so mean. He hasn't had his coffee yet. Now, of course, in the Japanese version, as Reliant alluded to, I thought he was just grumpy. And the Japanese version, they're very clear that a man is supposed to have, he's consumed too much alcohol and he's being grouchy. so we'll, my fault, when I explored around, ironically never actually going east, but after reading the manual, I'm like, I cannot believe I have to go all the way back down to Pallet Town. Like, that, going to Pallet Town felt like an epic adventure, because I'm new at RPGs, I barely know how to, I mean, yeah, I barely survived getting all the way back there. Getting up to Viridian City. Probably used my only potion already. I'm like, I have to go all the way back down to Pallet Town? Gee whiz. Right? Alright. Alright. So Charmander grew to level... Oh my gosh! Yeah, I definitely learned, level 9, I believe, is where he learns Ember, right? Oh, he learned Ember. Okay, great. Yeah, so I did not learn Ember and when I was playing, because I didn't understand the concept of level grinding and everything. So, yeah, I didn't understand the concept of level grinding, so I did not learn Ember. Or my Charmander did not learn Ember until well into Viridian Forest. And in Viridian Forest is filled with lots of bug-type Pokemon and trainers that specialize in raising bugs. Fire is super effective against bugs. So, at this point, my Charmander basically became an unstoppable living fortress. Now, Reliot's saying they imagined Big Al from Toy Story 2 saying that. I have to drive... I never saw Toy Story 2, I only saw the first one, so I'm not even going to attempt. I don't know what Big Al sounds like. Charmander learned Ember. Definitely a good, if I level my... Yeah, I won't go out of my way to, No, first we're gonna go to Gary's house. Hi, H. Gary is out at Grandpa's lab. Okay, at some point she's gonna give us a town map. We really don't need it, but you might as well get it. We're gonna heal our Pokemon. And really, it's saying, I see your your strategy is little train station H was to set everything on fire. There we go. It's been a while, we might as well save. Good, you and your Pokemon are looking great. Take care now. You can do that line like Gilbert got... I can't... I've been talking for so much, I want to save my voice, I don't want to disturb my neighbors. I cannot do a Gilbert Godfrey voice without being incredibly loud. Alright. I study Pokemon's Professor Oak. Hey, do these people say anything different? I study okay, no, nothing different. Oh, H! How is my old Pokemon? Well, it seems to like you a lot. You must be talented as a Pokemon trainer. What? You have some... I forgot the... I want to do the anime style. And Bill Preston is saying that they don't think Gilbert Godfrey can do his own voice without being incredibly loud. Yeah, my old Pokemon. Yeah, something... you caught... Yeah, this is a Pokemon I caught in the 70s and left in its ball for like 40 years. Have fun. Yeah, that he's given up for 20 minutes. Yeah, I believe Gilbert Godfrey, when he was, like, in private, like, actually had, like, a relatively normal speaking voice, and that, you know, the Gilbert Godfrey voice, I mean, there's nothing else to call it, was something he did in public. Apparently there are a couple of recordings of him just in his own casual voice. Reliot caught that Charmander during the riots of 72. Ah, this is the custom Pokeball I ordered. Thank you. Gramps! What do you call me for? Oh, right, I have a request of you two. On the desk there is... I'm gonna do the Professor Oak anime voice. Reliot in chat saying, it was a different time. Potions had LSD in them by by default. But that's something I always wondered what the custom Pokeball was intended to be. In hindsight, we can imagine that it was imported from the Johto region, custom made by Kurt, the Pokeball artisan craftsman. Though we'll learn about him in Gold and Silver, and we're just started Red and Blue. So, on the desk there's my invention, Pokédex. It automatically records data on Pokemon you've seen or caught. It's a high-tech encyclopedia. H and Gary, take these with you. H got Pokédex from Oak. Azarus is saying it's like how everything has fentanyl in it now. And really it's saying, so it's the GS Ball. The greatest plot device never explored. Well, Kurt didn't create the GS Ball. The GS Ball was discovered by Professor Ivy, and Ash had to take it to Kurt. I like how the encyclopedias on the desk actually vanish when we get to make a complete guide on all the Pokemon in the world. That was my dream. But I'm too old, I can't do it. So I want you two to fulfill my dream for me. Get moving, you two. This is a great undertaking in Pokemon history. Alright, Gramps, leave it all to me. I hate to say it, but I don't need you. I know, I'll borrow a town map from my sis. I'll tell her not to lend you one. Haha. You butthole. Pokemon around the world wait for you, H. Now, really, it's saying, the GS Ball was supposed to have contained Celebi, and would have been a long-term travel companion, but Pokemon Forever is Greenland. The writer just hopes people would. Yeah, they could have come up with some. It's so silly to me that they decided not to do anything. They could have done. They could have had, they could have done anything with the GS Ball. Just the sheer lack of imagination, considering that was the GS Ball. It was a multi-season plot device. Yeah, they went to the Orange Islands to collect the GS Ball, carried it all the way through the Orange Islands, and they went to Johto to bring the GS Ball to Kurt. Hey, but you know what? The GS Ball is the reason I did not trust the whole Dr. Jaeger's basement plot for Attack on Titan. I was like, no, they're never gonna get to this basement. I know. I'm ruined from the GS Ball. I never trust anime plot hooks like that again. We're never gonna find out what is in that basement. But anyway, okay, so we saved. So what do the balls do? Wait, did I? Oh, so the GS Ball. Wait, did I get free Pokeballs? No, I did not. Yeah, so Pokeballs are. Azurest. Azurest is saying, what do the balls do? I'm a girl. These balls are for everyone, male, female, and otherwise. The Pokeballs are devices that are used in the world of Pokemon to capture and transport Pokemon. Yeah, so, really, it's saying the balls are inert. Oh, the GS Ball, that is. Now, the GS Ball, to tie in with Pokemon Gold and Silver, the GS Ball was a unique Pokeball that was gold and silver colored instead of the traditional red and white color. And the GS Ball was a Pokeball that could not be opened and contained a mystery Pokemon. And Ash and his friends went to another part of the world, an island archipelago called the Orange Islands, which to collect the GS Ball from a Professor Ivy, I believe, who was looking after it and studying it. And Ash was to take the GS Ball to the Johto region to take it to a Pokeball expert craftsman who was going to study it and learn its secrets. Oh, Azurus is saying, don't talk to them like they're an idiot. Okay, I'm very sorry. Very, very sorry. Alright. Actually, at this point, and once I hit level 10, once I reach the next town. The GS ball was a key item in the Japanese version of Gold, Silver, and only in Crystal. The GS ball only appeared in Crystal, and it was only accessible through the it was only accessible through that Mobile Link GB thing. Like the Mobile Link, like where you actually linked your Game Boy Color to a mobile phone. Which was something that for some reason the American FCC would not permit Nintendo to do. Asherus is saying, mansplaining Pokeball slapped my head. Oh boy. Well, let's make it into town. Now, Reliot's saying, if I ever got a hold of a translated copy, they'd love to see me play Telefang. Yeah, I am aware of Telefang. It's another creature-raising game. It'll be far in the future for sure. And by the way, they announced the Analog 3D, a new console by Analog, the company, which will do for Nintendo 64 cartridges what my Analog Pocket that I'm using right now does for Game Boy cartridges and other handheld cartridges. There are several N64 games that probably will never be on Nintendo Switch Online and will probably never get digital re-releases or remasters. And the Analog 64 is the simple way to play those cartridges in native HD, and because I prefer playing it with original cartridges to unofficial emulation when possible. Yeah, Telefang is a Japanese-only game. I'm gonna play it someday. It's a game I'd consider playing. Alright, we made it through that grass, because Pokemon only attack as we walk through wild grass, the tall grass. Actually, you know what I'm gonna do? As an introduction to what Pokemon is like, the basic flow of gameplay, I think this is a good stopping point. We're gonna save, because there's lots of interesting stuff to do that would be great as a starting point for next stream. Whereas by the end of my first day playing the game, back in '98, by the end of my first day, I had already defeated Brock. And now it was a heck of a grind to beat Brock on the first day, especially being new at RPGs, new to the idea of leveling up, waiting to get lucky in terms of the different moves he used. But, yep, so that does it for Pokemon Red for now. I will be back on Saturday, not tomorrow. I'll be back on Saturday the 26th. I will be busy doing things out in my professional life. Yeah, I'll be back in my professional life doing things in that realm. Which is the reason I did the Friday night stream instead of Saturday. But I have an idea. I have a wonderful idea. How about we raid someone